Om Jaya Tvam Devi Chamunde Jaya Bhutapaharini Jaya Sarvagate Devi Kalaratri Namosute Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadra Kali Kapalini Durga Shiva Kshama Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute. Salutations to that goddess, the slayer of the demons Chanda and Munda, the one who dispels all ghosts and obstacles. She is the refuge of all beings, Sarvagate Devi. She is the dark night, Kalaratri. Salutations to that goddess who is ever victorious, who is victory embodied, who is auspiciousness embodied. She who is embodied as all mantras, Swaha, Swadha, Vashat, Voshat, and others. Salutations to that goddess, Kali, the auspicious and terrifying one. Om Avachanam Movali Kramayata Marichi Sankramanam Evaiko Guru Tarupalabdameva Tatmam Eko Devaha Tasyaika Sahajam Bhava Bhumischit Shaktihi. Om, there is only one Guru, and that is the ray of unbroken transmission that flows through the lineage. There is only one God, which is that reality to which one awakens as a result of transmission. There is only one Shakti, which is none other than Vimarshana, the sense of spontaneous and easeful I-ness, or the ground of spontaneous and easeful I-ness. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheśvarā, Guru Reva Param Brahma, Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha, Akhanda Mandala Akaram, Vyaptyam Yena Characharam, Tadpadam Shitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha. Ajnanatimidandasya Jnana Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha. Om, salutations to Guru. Guru is Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva himself. The Guru is verily that supreme reality consciousness in which all of this appears. The Guru is the unbroken circle of awareness, which is manifesting in all things as all things, the all-pervasive mandala. Salutations to the Guru Mandala. Salutations to the incarnation of Shiva's compassion, the Guru who has revealed to me the supreme reality by applying the collyrium or the kohl, the eyeliner of knowledge. Om, salutations to that Guru. Om Guru Pyo Namaha. Om Parama Guru Pyo Namaha. Parampara Guru Pyo Namaha. Parameshti Gurave Namaha. Om Ganganeshaya Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Salutations to the lineage. Om peace, peace, peace. Janma. So today is, as you know, a very special day. It's the amāvasyā. And not just any amāvasyā, it's the first day that opens the goddess festival, but this is called the gupta navarātrī, the secret navarātrī, because often when people think of the goddess festival, the 9 nights of Durga, Navaratri, typically they are thinking of the Sharat Navaratri, the spring, autumn Navaratri, which happens in August, September, around that time. And that's because that's likely the one that most people have celebrated in their life. That's the biggest one. And it's interesting actually to note that that might not have been the original Navaratri. Arguably it's the spring Navaratri, the Chaitra Navaratri in like early April or late March. Like that's the one that arguably came first. And it makes sense because the goddess is typically associated in most parts of India. And by India, as you know, I'm speaking of what now includes, which at that time maybe included Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Tibet, Sri Lanka, just the Indic civilization. You'll note that like maybe the first version of Navaratri is a spring festival. And we see the rejuvenation of nature. And around the time, just before Shivaratri, you can see all these trees coming and all the plants. And there's like such an abundance of prana in the world. And then we see that prana and we think, Shakti. The way the sun shines, the way the flowers are blooming, and we think the goddess, that is the first sense that we get maybe culturally of the goddess, springtime. But then legendarily, Rama of the Ramayana is about to storm the gates of Lanka and take back Sita in this like epic siege against Ravana, one of the greatest devotees of Mother and of Shiva ever. And so it's this wonderful moment where Rama realizes that he cannot win the battle until he first worships this Kshatriya goddess, this Durga, this Kali, this Shakti, Adya Devi. And to win the battle requires Shakti's grace, but it's off-season. It's not Navaratri. So the time to worship the goddess is best done in Navaratri. So then Rama prays to the goddess, and by her grace, she introduces like a new Navaratri, the autumn Navaratri. And then Rama is able to complete his Vrat, his 9 nights of worship. And as a result, he gets her blessing, and then he wins the battle. So the idea here is that kings rule by the grace and authority of the goddess. This is like a mandate of heaven kind of idea that we find with every ancient kingdom. Like even in the Egyptian sense, the king is consecrated by the priestly elite, the magi, and then only the king is able to rule. Like only until the king undergoes this initiation, a sort of Osiris like underworld initiation where the king is ritually dismembered, brought into the underworld, and through some initiation ceremony then resurrected, kind of like in this Osiris Christ like arc. Only then is the king fully integrated, having like integrated the shadow side, to use a Jungian term here, and then only is the king able to do their job as a selfless representative of the divine. So the king, the pharaoh in the Egyptian context, whether it's like Cleopatra or Tutankhamun or something, like the king is considered a living representative of God on earth. And in that sense, the king is like a guru. The king is a living incarnation of God's grace and rules as God would rule. Like Viranatha's new tattoo, what would Kat do? Like what would Kali do? It's like, yeah, you probably want your king to think that. What would Osiris do? What would Jesus do? What would Kali do? And you look upon your king or your queen as like a living representation of the divine, and then their actions will be divine and they rule in this divine way. So it's a theocracy. The same thing is true of like ancient India. It's like in Indian civilization, the king or the queen, Maharaja, Maharani, rules in the authority of God. And so that person would have to gain the blessing and grace of God. And to do that, they would perform ceremonies, pujas, they would enlist priests, the brahmanas, to perform yagyas, and the king would sponsor those yagyas, like the Ashwamedha sacrifice, for instance, or the Rajasuya sacrifice, which are very complicated Vedic rituals involving a lot of state resources, where the king would have to feed so many people. And it's like a state affair, like everyone will come together for this great yagya, and people get fed, and it's a important thing, this festival to rejuvenate the state, and to invest the king or the queen with this authority by which they're able to rule. So Rama, notice, in the same sense, cannot wage war against Lanka without first getting the goddess's grace. So the autumn Navaratri, the Sharat Navaratri, that's like arguably a new Navaratri, which happened because of Durga's grace. She introduced the second Navaratri. But the Tantriks, the Devi traditions, the Shakta traditions, they understand that like the goddess is available, as it were, all the time, but especially during transitory liminal periods, like when the night turns into day, that's Sandhya, dawn, or when the day turns into night, especially, that next Sandhya, the dusk, or even at noon or at midnight. These are all moments of transition. And here in this liminality, the goddess can be contacted. And of course you can see this is coming from the Brahmanic Vedic tradition of Sandhya Vandana. There are these periods that are considered most auspicious for worship, and the Brahmana, the Brahmin male, at age 9 receives his mantra called the Pranava as well as the Gayatri. And once he gets the Pranava and Gayatri, he then is taught a puja, a special kind of ritual which employs the Pranava, the Bija mantra, and the Gayatri mantra, which is like a very powerful mantra considered, it's from the Rig Veda. And in this passage, it's considered the holiest passage of the holiest, most ancient of Vedas. So this is essentially a mantra dīkshā, an initiation into a mantra that only Brahmin males are eligible for. And then upon getting this mantra, they also learn a ceremony, a ritual, which they are then not just allowed, but obligated to perform every single day. Ideally twice a day, at dawn and at dusk, or ideally maybe even 4 times a day, dawn, noon, dusk, and midnight. But this was only open to the Brahmin male, arguably, for a long time, until it was then introduced maybe for other castes as well, like Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. So anybody who was given this dīkshā, this initiation at age 9, is called a dvija, a twice-born person. Because they were born through the mother's womb. That's how they like came to get this dīkshā. And then once they get this dīkshā, they're baptized in a sense. They're given a second birth. They're born again, as it were. So they're called dvijas now. So I suspect that this wasn't always available to Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, but at a certain point, in some places in India, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas would also get this dīkshā. But prior to this, I think it was just the Brahmana who was expected to know Sandhya Vandana. It was only the Brahmana who was expected to like use the Gayatri mantra along with its bija, pranava, otherwise known as Om, which actually is so sacred, so secret, that until recently it was not said aloud You couldn't say it aloud until you got this dīkshā. And even after this dīkshā, you wouldn't say it aloud. It's something that when you say aloud, it becomes kind of like sacrilege to just say it aloud. It becomes mundane, something sacred when said aloud in this way. In some sense, when it loses its secrecy, it also loses its sacredness. So sacrality, that's given by secrecy and given by dīkshā and given by this like special process of transmission throughout the lineage, which is typically a family lineage. So I think for a long time, there was no need for Kshatriyas or Vaishyas to know this mantra. It was just the Brahmanas who would be performing these rituals anyway. And a Kshatriya, a king, when he, she, or they were to rule, they would just like employ Brahmanas to do the ceremonies that would require these rituals. So why would they themselves learn the ritual when their duty was different? Their duty was to like fund and patronize and donate to these Brahmanas. And then they would perform the rituals on their behalf, and they would be the yajnakartris, the sponsors of the ritual, and they would then get the merits of the ritual. So as we were discussing the other day in the car, it's like you get the benefit of sponsoring a ritual, and the people doing those rituals, they're doing it on your behalf. And so it's a state project, like it's a state-funded event, this Brahmana getting his mantra and then at some point using that mantra for the sake of rejuvenating the state and supporting the king. So like I was arguing in that other conversation, I think it was on dīkshā, it was called regarding dīkshā, Tāntrik initiation. In that conversation I was saying that like for a long time I think Indic civilization didn't think of this ritual in the context of personal spiritual emancipation. The goal was not moksha or siddhi prapti or anything. It wasn't about like your own salvation. The soteriology was maybe secondary here. It was about like a social project, like a cultural, civilizational project that was meant to align the entire society with the forces of nature, which the early Vedic civilization understood very well because of the revelation called the Vedas. So the collection of hymns in the Vedas, whether they're the Samhitas, the hymns to the various personified forces of nature, or whether they were the Brahmanas, the hymns that detail the performance of certain rituals, or even the Aranyakas and the Upanishads, the more contemplative, somewhat Gnostic, esoteric teachings as to why the rituals are to be performed at all. And these Aranyakas and Upanishads, of course, go on to reveal some deeper metaphysical and ontological truths regarding Brahman, the absolute nature of reality, which is here understood to be consciousness, which is itself bliss, and which is itself, most importantly, the absolute structure of all reality. It is that in which reality appears, out of which it emerges and into which it dissolves. So that Brahman is not necessarily interesting to the Samhita portion or the Brahmana portion, only becomes discussed in the Aranyaka and most especially in the Upanishad portion. But why would a Kshatriya or a Vaishya need to know any of these things? Arguably only a Brahmana would have access to these things, and only a Brahmana would have any use for these things. And when the Brahmana does these rituals, it is for not their own sake or the sake of their caste, but for the sake of all caste, for the sake of the entire Vaidika dharma, the civilization, the society, the culture. But then along the way, we started to realize that these rituals have personal value, personal soteriological value, beyond just fulfilling your duty to the state and to nature, beyond just being aligned with the forces of nature for the purposes of living a good life here and in the hereafter. There might be some other goals that a human might have, even after securing pleasure and like a pleasurable, rewarding life in the terms of like eating good food and seeing beautiful things and smelling beautiful things and having pleasant experiences. Beyond just that, and beyond even artha, the acquisition of not just wealth but meaning, like the idea that when you do something, not just for the sake of personal sensual gratification, but for the sake of like contributing to society in a way that leaves a legacy, in the way that gives you this rewarding sense of being a person of value, like in a way that integrates you with the forces of nature and you feel like you're actually like giving something to nature and to society. Like even beyond that, arguably there's something worth striving for. Beyond even going to heavens and enjoying super sensual delights or a super sensual sense of meaning, beyond even that, there is something which is just called moksha. So dharma here refers to the Vedas, and the Vedas here refer to a collection of hymns that are divinely revealed, teaching human beings about nature and about what it means to be aligned with the forces of nature for the sake expressly of attaining kama and artha. There's dharma, and through dharma you're attaining kama, which is sensual gratification, and arguably most importantly artha. Beyond all these three goals, dharma, kama and artha, then a fourth goal is articulated, moksha. And that goal arguably is not social, it's not cultural, it's personal. Each person is striving to attain moksha. And then later in the Tāntrik world, that word moksha will be described as siddhi, which means also magical dominion over the world, a kind of like magical power, a magical conquest, as it were, to get the most out of this world beyond just kama and artha. So the purpose of siddhi is not necessarily for kama or for artha. It's not for pleasure, nor is it even for like establishing works that will leave a legacy and contribute to society. Those things are great, but you don't need siddhi or moksha for those things. You just need dharma. Just through the Vedas and through the proper performance of Vedic rituals, just through sponsoring those Vedic rituals as a king or as a merchant, just through that alone, you live a wonderful life. You'll have everything that you could ever want in life. You'll be a fully psychologically integrated being if you would just sponsor or perform these rituals. But arguably that's not enough. Even having attained all of these things, the person is still dissatisfied because they sense that there's something more. There's like this sarvananda prapti or dukkha nivritti idea, the attainment of that which is higher than anything, and having attained this thing, nothing higher can be attained. Like we were saying, na dukhena guru napi vichalyate. Krishna says in the Gita that having attained this, it is so great that not even the heaviest sorrow, not even God herself, not even the Guru can shake your unshakable conviction that grants you the highest satisfaction. So it's freedom from all suffering, sarva dukkha nivritti, categorical end to suffering, and it's the attainment of the highest bliss. Like this personal project of you could maybe arguably call it salvation, or emancipation, or self-actualization. This personal project becomes exceedingly important and is now articulated as a goal unto itself. And it is the case that you probably won't even want this until you have some level of kama and artha. And you probably won't be able to enjoy in a sustainable way either kama nor artha without dharma. So learning dharma, the Vedic rituals, and performing Vedic ceremonies, or at least sponsoring the performance of Vedic ceremonies, is like the first thing that you're going to be interested in. And having attained these things, when you've come to a certain state of psychological wellness or integration, to use Jungian terms, like then only will you be interested in moksha. So arguably a lot of people that come to religion, a lot of them aren't actually interested in moksha or siddhi. They're interested in arguably just like having a good life, like having a meaningful and fulfilling life. And the idea that spirituality is going to give this to you, of course that's an interesting idea, because often spirituality, as you learn and as you come to experience the moment you take dīkshā and start practicing, tends to do the opposite. Sometimes it causes your life to become chaotic and destabilized, and then when you come to Kali you realize like actually that's desirable. It frees you of your hang-ups, and it gives you a sort of resilience, and it frees you from the idea that you need certain things to feel safe. It tears away from you all of those things that gave you your former sense of self and reveals to you a different, indestructible self. Beyond your social self and beyond your psychological self, there is that Atman or the Paramatman that is quite distinct from the Jiva actually. Quite distinct from our sense of who we think we are. And to realize that, to recognize that, is sometimes a violent process. It's like entering into a crucible and having all that is not true and not ultimately sustainable somewhat dramatically dissolved and ripped away. So in one sense, the spiritual aspirant is almost a masochist. She comes to crave those experiences that destabilize what was never ultimately real in order to reveal that which is truly, indestructibly, eternally real. So the goal of moksha then can sometimes contradict the goal of kama and artha. So moksha as a separate goal from artha and kama is another idea that we're interacting with in Indian civilization, in Indic or Sanskritic civilization. So then you get like a group of people who decide to opt out of the dharmic project of attaining kama and artha. They're no longer interested in marriage, and you have to be married in the Indic civilization in order to be able to perform Vedic ceremonies. They're not even interested in acquiring wealth, and wealth is somewhat necessary if you want to like have sensual gratification. And of course, they're not really interested in sensual gratification, arguably because in this or in some previous life, they've already had enough of that. They've had at least enough to come to the conclusion that there is something worth wanting other than those things. So you'll see, for instance, in the Chandogya Upanishad, or maybe I should say the Birhad-Aranyak Upanishad, this is a better example. You get this character Yajnavalkya, who is like a Vedic patriarch. Like he's got wives, like 2 wives, he's got property, and he's enjoyed the world, and he's performed all these Vedic sacrifices. He's a Brahmana, presumably. And now he decides to like fuck off and go to the forest or go to a mountain cave and sit there and articulate for himself this new goal. And his wife, Maitreyi, is naturally quite confused. She's like, why would you want to do this? Like, what about wealth? And he's like, no, wealth is great, but there's something even deeper than wealth. And the opening of the Birhad-Aranyak Upanishad is this kind of Tāntrik discourse, actually, between this Yajnavalkya, here he's like Śiva, and Maitreyi, who is like Shakti, who is asking him questions about like what this moksha is and why he would want to become a sannyasin, that is, why he would want to become a wandering mendicant and sit and meditate and do certain esoteric practices and contemplate certain esoteric ideas, which of course the Upanishad will go on to reveal. And his response is that he wants moksha. And to get moksha, he steps away from those things which he previously might have valued, like artha and kama, and also from dharma. He's no longer interested in performing Vedic ceremonies. So in a sense, if somebody is a sannyasin, if they take like the sankalpa, the decision to pursue moksha, arguably they're exempt from any Vedic ceremonies. They can't perform Vedic ceremonies, including Durga Puja, the 5-day ritual that we tend to perform in the last 5 nights of this goddess festival. Like, they won't be able to do that because a lot of that requires Vedic mantras. A lot of that is a Vedic ceremony, which you need to be married for, arguably. So, in that sense, if you understand moksha to be to be a separate goal from artha and kama, the question then becomes, what kind of person would choose this goal? And the answer that we get from this civilization is the kind of person who already has artha and kama. Then it seems like the only kind of person who would like pursue moksha is someone well into their 50s or 60s or probably even 70s. So then you get this new idea, the varna ashrama kind of idea, where it's like, okay, there's these 4 stages of life, and in the beginning, your only job in life as a brahmachari or brahmacharini is to learn the Vedas, to learn dharma. So the first stage of your life is entirely devoted to learning dharma, which looks like sitting at the feet of a Vedic acharya, a Vedic guru, who very likely will be your father or some other elder in your community that your father sends you to go and see. Like in the case of the Chandogya Upanishad, the Shvetaketu comes back from college, as it were. He's living in the guru's house, and then he learns all the Vedas, meaning he learns astronomy and grammar, he learns poetry, kavya it's called, and of course he's learning like ceremonies and rituals and things, which maybe he will then use when he's employed by a king or employed by some family to perform weddings and other sorts of ceremonies, funerals and other like priestly services. But then when he comes home, his father then asks him an Upanishadic question, like, so you've learned the Vedas, you've probably learned the Samhitas and Brahmanas and maybe even the Aranyakas, but do you know that thing which is most worth knowing? That thing, upon having known it, everything else becomes known? And the boy is like, dude, there's no such thing. Like, knowledge of astronomy is only relevant for astronomical questions. Like when I'm pulling up a jyotish, like a kundali or something, when I'm doing someone's chart, then that knowledge will be valuable. That knowledge isn't necessarily going to help me in music. That's a different field with a different set of knowledge. That's why if you get a degree in a particular thing, say you get a degree in astronomy or something, you're not really expected to be a master of musical issues. Like, you're not going to be able to understand musical things just from understanding astronomical things. They're different fields of knowledge, each with their own technical terms, and each with they're disciplines unto themselves. And this boy, Shvetaketu, the savant that he is, he's got like he's a triple degree holder or something. He like just knows about so many different things. But he knows enough to know that there's no such thing as that knowledge which allows one to know something about everything. And the father disagrees. The father thinks that, like, no, there is such a thing. And maybe you should go and ask your guru for it. And the boy goes back to his guru and asks, and to his shock and surprise, the guru reveals that there is actually such a vidya. It's called Brahma Vidya. And what's more, it's soteriological in nature. So if you know this, then you become this. Brahma Veda, Brahmaiva Bhavati, it says in the Mundaka Upanishad. To know Brahman is to be Brahman. The moment you know it, it's a special kind of knowing, because it's a kind of recognition or revelation that shows you that you were never what you thought you were. In fact, you are something much deeper than the social or psychological self. And more importantly, this thing that you ultimately are, this Brahman, or whatever you want to call it, this is of the nature of all things. So once you know this of yourself, you know this to be true of all things, and that's how you know about everything. So he learns that there is such a knowledge, Brahma Vidya it's called, but sadly his guru doesn't know it. The guru knows of it, but the guru doesn't know it. In the Chandogya Upanishad, the guru sends the boy back to his father, saying that there's only one person in our village, or one person in our community, who does know it, and that's your father, actually. So the boy then has to go back to his father, somewhat with his tail between his legs, because he was proven wrong, He's a young boy, so you can imagine he's full of pride, having learned all the things that he just learned. And now he's like shocked that there's something he hasn't learned, and he has to go shamefully back to his father to ask for this knowledge. So he goes and he asks his father, and his father teaches him that just like clay is common to all pots, just like water is common to all waves, just like gold is common to all gold ornaments, there is this thing, this substantial reality called Brahman, which is of the nature existence, consciousness, and bliss, and he teaches him all about it. And then at the end of the discourse, the father says to the boy, to Shvetaketu, he says, Tattvamasi Shvetaketu, and that thou art, you are that. And King Elizabeth, earlier it sent me a text. I was in the flight and I was hoping to respond to it. But in your text you were saying, we are part of Ma. Yes, that's a view. Ramanuja has that view. That's definitely a valid view. But no, our claim is that you are not a part of Ma. Ma is this Brahman, consciousness, bliss, absolute. You are that in its entirety. Like you cannot say a gold ornament that is made entirely of gold is a part of gold. It is gold through and through. You can't say that a wave is part of water. No, it is water through and through. The wave is the ocean. The gold ornament is the gold. And the clay pot is not a part of clay. Its nature is clay. It is clay. So you are Ma. You are Kali. And right now, everything that's happening in the world, everything you see around you, in the past, in the present, in the future, in realms beyond the physical, like all of that is Ma. And all of that is you. And all of that is your dance, your action, your kriya, your karma. To recognize that you are Ma is to recognize that you've always been and always will be that reality in which all these waves come and go. So you're not a part. You are it. And it's a stunning revelation. You don't become this. You recognize that you always were this. So like that realization is really valuable because upon realizing it, the claim is that you become it, and upon recognizing yourself as this, sarva ananda prapti, sarva dukkha nivritti, the attainment of the highest bliss, the end of all suffering. So this is ultimately the most valuable thing you can know. And therefore, one ought to know this. Blessed is the one who learns about this. Twice blessed is the one who understands this. And thrice blessed is the one who realizes this. And I would say even more blessed is the one who, having realized this, then shares this knowledge with others. But it's considered a gupta vidya, secret knowledge. And it's arguably even more secret than the pranava, Om. And it's even more secret than the Gayatri Mantra. And it's even more secret than the Sandhya Vandana, the ritual that you perform employing the Gayatri Mantra for the purposes of state and social rejuvenation or harmonization with the forces of nature. So like this is called Gupta Tara or Gupta Niyatara Vidya. Whereas the other thing is called Spashta Vidya, meaning exoteric knowledge. The Vedas, however sacred they might be, they're still considered somewhat exoteric, somewhat public and somewhat social. This Gupta Niyatara Vidya is esoteric. And this is probably only revealed to you after you master all the exoteric stuff. So arguably, it's not until later in your life that you become interested in this, and you maybe can even have the capacity to understand this. I sometimes think of the Kabbalistic tradition and how in the Aramaic Jewish world, in that Hebrew, like 3rd century, like Merkaba mystical kind of culture, it's like only a 40-year-old married man would be given arguably the right to study Kabbalah. Kabbalah being the esoteric dimensions of that tradition. If you didn't have position in society, if you hadn't already accumulated some wealth, if you haven't already enjoyed the world to some extent, and if you haven't like learned the lessons that life itself has to teach, then why would you teach this knowledge? You probably wouldn't be interested in it, first and foremost. Secondly, even if you were, you probably wouldn't have the maturity to understand it, and you certainly wouldn't have the wisdom to apply it in your life, because you have all these other things that you probably want and should probably spend all of your time trying to attain. So in that same sense, the Varnashrama system argues that this knowledge is really only open to Brahmins, and that too, a Brahmin male at age like maybe 70 or something. The first 25 years you just learn about Dharma, you learn about the Vedas, probably not even about Brahma Vidya. Then the next 25 years, until you're like 50 or so, you're married and you have children and you do your best to like acquire wealth and contribute to society in a way that leaves a legacy and gives you a rewarding sense of purpose. And then with that wealth, you also simultaneously like enjoy the good life. And wealth is considered a spiritual value in Indian civilization. Like poverty is not fetishized the way it is in some other traditions. So having wealth, having pleasure, you then get to like the third stage of your life where you give your business or whatever to your kids. You like have trained them at that point. They've also gone through their 25 years of brahmacharya, and then they then inherit the family business, whether that's teaching the Vedas or being a merchant or ruling the kingdom or something. And then you just retire. You and your wife, your partner, you retire to the forest, and then you learn Brahma Vidya. Arguably, when you go to the forest, you maybe go back to your guru's house or some other guru's house, especially a guru with Brahma Vidya, and then you just like learn this stuff. And then the last 25 years of your life, the sannyas period, you and your wife like split up, and she or he or they go off and meditate on their own, and you go off and meditate on your own, and both of you ultimately maybe realize, oh my God, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and that will be the culmination of your life. But when we look at Shankara, we see the case of somebody who at age like 16 already has this knowledge. Somebody who as young as like 9 years old, like he just decides that he doesn't want to get married or he doesn't want to have children, and he's not interested in wealth or pleasure. He just wants this liberating knowledge. So how do you explain that? Like if you need life experience to be able to understand this and apply this, and most importantly, if you need to like have the good life in order to even want this, how then can a young person, prior to tasting the world, come to want this? Like, what would prompt such a person to value this over all the other things that life has to offer, which arguably they haven't yet even tasted? How can you renounce something before you even understand what it is to enjoy that thing? It seems premature, and it seems counterproductive, actually. That's why I think the Vedic civilization is so exalted in its like life-affirming attitude. It says it's good to have wealth, it's good to enjoy pleasure, and until you do, you're never going to be interested in these quote-unquote higher things. And they're not necessarily higher things. These things are all each great, each in their own place, each in their proper time. To everything there is a season, as the Bible will say. So, how then can a kid like Shankara, or the many people in Indian civilization that have chosen to like give everything up and become a sannyasin or sannyasini right away, how then could they come to this desire, or come to this like maturity, or come to this vidya, this Brahma vidya, this knowledge? And so we posit past lives. We say, if you didn't enjoy all this stuff in this life, it is possibly the case that you enjoyed it in some previous life. And you've enjoyed it so much in previous lives that you come into this life maybe with this like intuitive memory of what it is to have wealth, what it is to enjoy the world. And with this memory in place, you just decide, yeah, it's not really for me. I've enjoyed it already. And if you haven't enjoyed it already, then you will come into this life, and sooner or later you'll start to crave wealth, you start to crave pleasure. And if you do, it is important that you're honest about that, and you just pursue that. You pursue wealth, you pursue pleasure, and the Vedas, the dharmic civilizational project called the Vedas, that gives you enough for the articulation of the good life. And not just now, in this earthly incarnation, but even after you leave the body, in the hereafter, in some heavenly loka, you can enjoy an even better life there in terms of pleasure and in terms of like artha. But if somehow you at a young age decide to like take up the life of sannyas, like Yajnavalkya did in his like more mature, like later years, it must be because you enjoyed these things in a previous life. But notice, thus far we're articulating moksha as like something other than dharma, kama and artha. The Tāntrik tradition innovates upon this by saying spiritual life is not just about articulating this other goal, this like secret fourth thing. It's actually uniquely able to give you both that moksha as well as bhoga, and by bhoga is meant kama and artha. So the purpose of tantric practice then is to get this kind of magical empowerment that gives you pleasure in the world, like sensual enjoyment, that allows you to accomplish things and leave a legacy and contribute to society. And even beyond that, to like play with the forces of space, time, and reality. You should be able to like live as long as you want in the kind of body that you want. You can be young and beautiful as long as it's desirable to you to be young and beautiful. Like the vicissitudes of time become powerless against a siddha, against one who has mastered the tantra. And this person is not limited by space or corporate reality either. This person should be able to shapeshift, turn into any kind of animal as they so choose. They should be able to go into different lokas and hang out with Gandharvas and Apsaras and all manner of celestial beings. They can like pop into Naga Loka for a little bit of a Leela here and there. Kind of like the Chiranjeevs, you know, Narada or Markandeya or Hanuman. These are all siddhas. They're masters of reality in that they can stay embodied in any kind of body that they want and just play or be devotees or be bodhisattvas and compassionately help others. It's a kind of control that you have over time and space. So it's not just about pleasure or even material accomplishments. It's about some kind of magical empowerment too. So a lot of the tantras, like you look at the Yogini Hridaya, its goal is almost expressly this magical dominion or magical empowerment, which is sometimes called bhukti or bhoga or just siddhi. And this is as valuable to the tantric as mukti. So now you get this new idea of jivan mukti, which means liberated while remaining embodied. And this kind of embodiment, you must remember, is a special kind of embodiment, a magical kind of embodiment, which is sometimes in the post-classical tantric tradition called the divya deha, or the more evocatively the vajra deha, the lightning body. Divya deha means the divine body. It's a type of embodiment which is magical in nature and very desirable. So in the tantric world, we're arguing that like both these goals of bhoga and yoga, or bhoga and moksha, both of them are valid, and that you don't have to choose one over the other. They're not mutually exclusive, nor are they even necessarily sequential. You don't have to get one in order to get the other. Arguably, if you get moksha, then you can have bhoga. And if you get bhoga, then you can have moksha. So if you want to think in terms of sequence, the arrows can go both ways. But they're not thought of in terms of sequence. They're thought of in terms of simultaneity. Success in Tantra means simultaneously attaining moksha which is sarvananda prapti and sarva dukkha nivritti, the attainment of the highest bliss and the categorical end of all suffering, that is attained along with all the pleasures and all the material enjoyments you could ever desire, because you have magical dominion over the world. So that's the tantric innovation, as it were. And the tantric tradition will emphasize greatly the purpose, greatly dīkshā, initiation. And the initiation into tantra is very much like the initiation into the Veda. Just like the 9-year-old Brahmin boy will receive in this sacred, very intimate ceremony, usually conducted by his family, he will receive the bija mantra, Om. He will receive the Gayatri mantra, which is like the expansion of the bija mantra. And more importantly, he will receive some kind of ritual technique. This is called a vidhi, or in the tantric world, it's called a puja. And then every day, at these liminal periods, dawn, dusk, and maybe also additionally noon and midnight, he will perform these rituals. At least once a day, the brahmana will perform this ritual. And this is more important. It's not necessarily just for the state or for the community, for the society, for nature. It's for him, for that brahmana to attain some kind of moksha. In the tantric world, we then say, because there's great soteriological value, there's great personal value to this mantra and to the performance of the ritual employing the mantra, then everyone should have it. It shouldn't be restricted to just Brahmin males. Arguably, if there's soteriological value to this ritual, then why deny a person the right, especially a person who is sincere about it, why deny them the right to access this personal soteriological value? Hello, cat. Addy. And so then we say, Vivekananda, you have a question?
Check your lobby.
Check my... Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I wasn't checking my lobby at all. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sure. That'd be nice. Yeah, I'm sorry. All of you in the waiting room. My bad, you guys. I was not looking at my waiting room situation. Okay, welcome. So, the first thing to point out is that almost all tantric dīkshās, have in mind the Vedic Upanaya ceremony. That's the first thing to point out here is that the template for the tantric dīkshā, for tantric initiation, is Vedic Upanaya. Now, when we consider the Upanaya, remember the first iteration of the Upanaya is the worship of the sun god, Savitar or Savitri, if you want to think in feminine terms, using the Gayatri mantra, which is the meter in which the mantra is chanted. And the purpose of this is to venerate the sun, so the sun will shine in such a way that all of nature is maintained. If the sun were to get 1 degree hotter, everyone would die. Or if the sun were to get 1 degree colder, the whole of nature will collapse. We know this. And arguably, we know this now with the scientific knowledge that we have. But the early Vedic civilization, maybe as early as 1900 BCE by conservative estimates, or maybe even earlier, 3800 BCE if we take that archaeological data from the Indus-Saraswati Valley seriously. You'll notice even then they knew how important the sun was as the kilaka, the peg about which all of nature turned. So the sun is personified as a being, or rather the innate divinity of the sun is recognized by this early, I'm going to argue, animistic tradition that saw in nature deities with personalities that could be propitiated and transacted with through these Vedic ceremonies, often involving fire sacrifice, known as yajna, and now in the modern tantric context it's called homa. So if you don't perform these yajnas, if you don't offer ghee, grita into the fire with the appropriate mantras, and if you don't do this regularly, then the sun will maybe shine too bright, it'll be 1 degree too hot or 1 degree too cold, and then everyone will die. So again, the goal in the first iteration of the Sandhya Vandana, or the Gayatri mantra chanting and ritual associated with the chanting, the purpose is expressly social. It's cultural, it's communal. It has to do with being in harmony with the forces of nature. It has nothing, arguably, to do with personal salvation, personal empowerment, or personal emancipation, or even self-actualization. It's not soteriological in nature, although it plays upon metaphysical and ontological principles that have to do with the structure of reality. Is that clear? That's the first thing to note. That it takes us a while, I think, in Vedic civilization to articulate moksha as a goal worth having. Where before it was just, here's the dharma, revealed by no deity, but just inherently present in reality to be discerned by sages with the sensitivity to hear these mantras. And then having learned the dharma, your only purpose in life, think of this in the terms of a pastoral nomadic community that's in an environment that they don't understand, and there's rain and maybe there's too much rain and now, there's a monsoon season and everybody dies because of a flood. Or in other parts of India, there's no rain and then like the crops don't grow. Or like there are jewels and they're buried deep in the earth and it's very hard to mine and get them out. Like all these resources are being hoarded. And we call those forces that hoard resources, like withhold the rains and jealously guard the jewels in the earth, we call those forces asuras. And then we call those forces that allow the rain to flow and allow the rivers to flow and allow the sun to shine, we call those forces devas. And you perform the yajna to propitiate the devas, so then they will be propitious and allow the rains to come, or prevent the rains from coming too much. And they allow there to be progeny and crops and lots of cows, and they protect you from enemy tribes and whatnot. And then you propitiate the devas so they win their wars against the asuras, and the asuras won't succeed in withholding all of these resources from you. And you don't care at all for anything, arguably, beyond the rain, beyond the crops, beyond the cows, beyond your progeny, beyond your like social and communal success as a nomadic civilization trying to understand a sometimes very hostile world. Everything, it's like Australia, everything is trying to kill you. So the Aboriginals then in Australia enter into a dream space and they learn about nature in a very subtle way, and through that understanding they can navigate nature, right, in a very special and harmonious way. And then once we realize, no, it's not just that. Like you can have all the cows in the world and you can be like resourced, you can be properly resourced in all the ways that nature will bless you with, but like there's still something else. And then comes the question of soteriology and personal salvation. That's probably when we expand the ritual beyond just Brahmin males. That's when Kshatriyas and Vaishyas can also be considered Dvijas. They're also then considered, Vedically speaking, candidates for this Upanaya ceremony. They might also get the sacred thread. They're then given the mantra, the pranava it's called. They're given the Gayatri mantra, and they're given the Sandhya Vandana. And they're told that their responsibility here on out is to perform the ritual and chant this mantra at these certain times of the day. So when you take dīkshā, notice, even if you're taking a Tāntrik dīkshā, the Vedic template is still the same. Sandhya Vandana. Now the Tāntrik innovation is to go beyond just the pranava, Om. They then offer other mantras which are considered to be even deeper and more essential than Om. They look at the Gayatri mantra and say, it's not the meaning of the mantra that matters. Because so much of the Vedas is like meaningful in a linguistic way. Like if you look at the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, that has a meaning. Bhu means the earth, Bhuva means the astral plane or the subtle realm, maybe the mind even, and Swarga or Swaha, the Swa means the causal realm, something even beyond the astral, like psychic space. Like that can be understood from the words Bhur Bhuva Swaha. Tat, which means that, Savitar or Savitri or Savitur, that is the deity, the sun, the name of the sun. Tat Savitur Varenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyoyo Naf Prachodayat. May that Savitri, that sun god, illumine my mind, that worshipable, worship-worthy, beautiful sun. May he, may she, may they guide my intellect. That's what the mantra means. Then you get the Sri Vidya tradition, and you get commentators like Bhaskararaya saying, well, okay, that's the exoteric meaning. That's what the words mean. But we don't care at all about the words. It's not the meaning of the words that makes the mantra powerful. It's the vibration contained in the phonemic value of each sound that make up those words. So if you take a sentence, a pada, or a vakya, and you break down the pada or vakya, you'll get varnas or mantras. You'll get not just words, you'll get the very letters or phonemes that make up the words. Like tat, sa, vi, tar, va, re, nya. Those are more important than tat savitor varenyam. Bha, ra, go. That's more important than bhargo. De, va, sya, dhi, yo, naf, na, or pra, cho, da, yata. Like these sounds themselves have magical value. They have like the unto themselves ability to like restructure reality within and without. And then you get this claim that even deeper than the Vedas are mantras like the Panchadashi and Shodashi. So you'll take the Panchadashi and you'll say, okay, there are 3 kutas, 3 parts of the Panchadashi. And then each kuta is then, like the work of Bhaskararaya shows this, then each kuta can be mapped onto the Gayatri mantra. So then they'll say the Gayatri mantra is great, but even subtler and even more powerful than the Gayatri mantra is this Sri Vidya mantra called the Panchadashi or the Shodashi. So the claim here is that like there's a secret knowledge that doesn't even depend on like Sanskrit meanings, that takes Sanskrit phonemes and employs them in particular orders or sequences in order to have even deeper results. And the results are, of course, like I just said earlier, moksha, but here defined as a kind of siddhi, a magical empowerment that grants bhukti, worldly enjoyment, in the terms of kama, artha, and something even more profound than that, and also emancipation. So then these are not seen as two different things. They're not seen as a sequence where one thing precedes the other thing. They're seen as a simultaneous attainment through the employment of subtler mantras than even the Vedas can give. So while the Tantric tradition is not going to like outright delegitimize the Vedas and say that they're not sacred, they're going to admit the sacred nature of the Vedas, but they're going to say that the Vedas are superseded, as it were, by some deeper knowledge. And so even in the Vedic tradition, prior to the Tantric revelation, if Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are being allowed to receive Sandhya Vandana and to receive Gayatri and to receive Om, that's already a concession that this thing is not just for communal or social benefit, it's for personal soteriological value. And if that's true, then there's a kind of sense of, let's open it up to everybody. Now, to this day, there are still people who think that that shouldn't be the case. There are people who think that only Brahmanas and Brahmin males at that should be given access to Sandhya Vandana, Gayatri and Om. This attitude is quite prevalent in the south actually, because the south of India, even in the case of Sri Vidya, Tantric tradition, even there you'll see people can still be very orthodox and very conservative, traditional in the way that they only think Brahmin males have a right to this, right? If the Vedic civilization is willing to open up Sandhya Vandana, Gayatri and Om to a wider audience than just the Brahmin male, the Tantric tradition is even more liberal than that. Because the Tantric tradition says, no, what about Brahmin women? You know? What about people who are not 9-year-old Brahmin boys? Like, if this has soteriological value for males, then we can't just consider women as like, they're called sahadharminis. Like the woman just like automatically gets all the spiritual merit of the male. In one sense, that's also a pretty progressive feminist idea. The idea is that like, why would a woman have to do rituals? Like the woman can chill. She can just like, you know, she's good. She's Gucci. Like her welfare, her spiritual and social welfare, that should be the man's job, the man's duty. He should like work really hard for it and she should just like be served in that way. But it's also a very disempowering view to say that your spiritual destiny is in the hands of your deadbeat husband. What if that guy sucks? Like if you cannot perform Sandhya Vandana, if you don't know the Gayatri Mantra, if you don't know Om, and your husband does, what if he doesn't do Sandhya Vandana? That's going to be incredibly frustrating. Because you have no way of like taking control of your own spiritual destiny. You're just waiting around for the males of your culture to do it for you. I mean, arguably, if they did it for you, that would be great. But if they don't do it for you, you should still be able to do it. And maybe if it is personally valuable, whether or not they do it for you doesn't matter. Because what they're doing is good for them. And if it's good for them, then by your performance of these same rituals, it'll be good for you. So then opening this up to women is one of the tantric innovations. The idea that there can be a woman guru, that a woman can give you a mantra, and more importantly, the idea that women can receive mantras and themselves perform rituals and themselves do japa, the recitation of those mantras, both in ritual and non-ritual contexts, that's a tantric innovation, right? The inclusion of women. Not just that, the inclusion of not just Brahmana women, but Kshatriya women and Vaishya women, and most importantly, Shudra women. And even more importantly, people who are not of the Vedic fold, people who are not Shudras or Vaishyas or Kshatriyas or Brahmins. If you don't have a caste, if you're not part of Vaidika Dharma, Vedic civilization, like say you're a Chandala, as we were discussing in that class about Mirabai, even then, you can be admitted in. And not only that, having been admitted into the tradition, if you master the tradition, you can yourself become a guru and then give mantras and initiate others. So this liberal attitude of like including everyone is really great. But just like the Vedic tradition has standards for who can be let in and who cannot be let in, and again, those standards are adjudicated based on caste, maybe also based on age, and of course based on gender or sex. In the Tantric tradition, it's not the case that your gender matters, nor your caste, nor your age. You could be any age, any caste, any gender. You could come from any tradition whatsoever. You could be a Caucasian person. You could be an African American person. You could be a South American person. You could be any kind of Indian person or non-Indian person at any age with any sex or gender. It doesn't matter. But something does still lock you out. And something also is there to bring you in. And that's called adhikari. Adhikari now means right or competency or qualification. And again, this is not adjudicated based on caste or gender or social status or age or anything. This is adjudicated along different metrics, which I want to discuss with you now. What is dīkshā in the Tāntrik context? And maybe for now, it's enough to remember that dīkshā, even in the Tāntrik context, is based on a Vedic template. So coming back to our navarātrī conversation, if the liminal periods in the day, dawn, dusk, noon, and midnight, are considered very good for worship, then in the Tantric sense, it's those liminal periods when you go from one season to another, from summer into spring, or from spring into summer, or from summer into fall, or from fall into winter, and then again from winter into spring. Those liminal periods between the seasons are almost exactly like the liminal periods between between day and night, and between night and day, and in between the day and in between the night. So in that sense, the Tantrics will say, why not have 4 Navaratris? You can even go further and say there are 8 Navaratris. So while most of you might be familiar with the Sharat Navaratri, the August or the September Navaratri, the Fall Navaratri, many more of you might also be familiar with the Fall and the Spring Navaratri. What we're going to celebrate now is the Summer Navaratri, and this is particularly oriented towards Lalita. In the Sri Vidya tradition, you'll see the winter one has to do with Matangi, like that. And there are different deities, Sri Vidya deities associated with all these different Navaratris. And for the next 9 nights, today is the new moon, amāvasyā, Pratipada, Dvitiya, Tritiya, all these nights, each one will be for the goddess, the 9 nights of Durga. And for 9 days, we just engage in intense spiritual practice, considering that this is a liminal time, which is very good. Just like dawn, dusk, noon, and midnight. This is a good time. Like whatever you do, it's like max XP weekend or something in a video game. Everything you do, all your rituals, all your study, all your contemplation, all of your japa, meaning mantra recitation, all of that is especially beneficial and especially helpful during this time. What's more is there's going to be Karka Sankranti, it's called, meaning we're going from one solar house to another. We're going from Ashwin, Gemini. We're going to go into this Karka, Cancer. So as you know, like now in the tropical system, it's already Cancer. But we're going to move into, today actually, in the tropical system, it's considered the Cancer new moon, right? But in the Vedic system, in sidereal astrology, it's the Gemini new moon. And we're soon going to enter into the house of Karka, the solar house of Karka. There's another liminal space here, where you're moving from one solar house to another, as we move from one season to another. So anything you do during Karka Sankranti, this transition of the sun, is also considered quite beneficial. This liminality is celebrated. And not just that, a lot of the times during Navaratris, you'll see there are eclipses, right? There are moments when the sun and the moon act in a certain way, and like that eclipse, whether it's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, there's typically one in each Navaratri. That eclipse is also considered a max XP period. So again, I hope you can see how the liminality, which the Sandhya Vandana introduces in the early part of Vedic civilization, that template is carried forward into the Tantric world and applied in the seasonal sense, in the solar house sense, in the eclipse sense, and that's why we have this very special time called Navaratri. Now, Gupta, it's called the Gupta Navaratri because often the spring and autumn one is celebrated exoterically in this spashta way. And this one is the Gupta Tara or Gupta Niyatara way. This is a secret one, which only Tantrics typically celebrate. So this Gupta Navaratri is very Tantric in nature. And I thought today I would talk about something very liminal and very important and very beautiful, which is not just the concept of dīkshā, which we discussed together a little bit on Thursday, because we had our Yogini Hridaya introduction class, and there we looked at the first 4 verses of the Yogini Hridaya, and you'll see Lord Śiva is very explicit. There Bhairava tells you what adhikari looks like, who can be let in, who should be kept out. And it's not based, again, on caste or on gender or on age or anything like that. But it is based on something. And what those qualifications are, Śiva is very clear about in the first 4 verses of this Yogini Hridaya. Now, I wanted to also look at the Vijnana Bhairava. Just as the Yogini Hridaya is considered a primary source, so too is the Vijnana Bhairava. However atypical it might be as a Tantra, it too is a primary source. And in verses 156 all the way to 160, like that's towards the end of the text, we do get actually another question. Who can be taught this? To whom can the Vijnana Bhairava be revealed? Who is this for? The question of adhikari comes up once more, and then we get that same instruction, as it were, from Lord Śiva in this other Tantra. Now, it's arguably the case that the Vijnana Bhairava is from the 9th century, 9th or 10th century. Maybe the Yogini Hridaya is from the 11th or 12th century. They're probably like different texts from different periods of history, but they seem to echo some very similar ideas. So the first thing I want to do with you now is I want to look at those verses. First, first 4 verses from the Yogini Hridaya, which we looked at together last week on Thursday. And then I want to look at verses 156 all the way to 160 in the Vijnana Bhairava. And now you can see 2 Sanskrit primary sources with their very clear definitions of adhikari, who can be let in and who should be kept out. What does it mean to be initiated into Tantra? And who is qualified to give initiation? And more importantly, I think most importantly, who is qualified to take initiation? That's the first thing I want to do with you tonight. But then I want to do something even more exciting. That should only take me like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, ideally. It shouldn't take me any more than an hour to get through these 8 or so verses, 4 from the Yogini Hridaya and 4 from the Vijnana Bhairava. But once I do that, right, like once we get past that piece, the next piece I want to share with you today is so cool, you guys, and so mysterious and so important, because this is my response, I think, to all those people on the internet and in our community that are just like so anal about what it is that we're doing. They don't know me. They don't understand my family lineages, both from my mother's side and from my father's side. They don't at all understand the Ramakrishna mission and the Ramakrishna lineages. And so they often question my legitimacy as an acharya and as a guru. I give some dīkshā and then they're like, hey, you have no right to give dīkshā. I'm like, okay, tell me why. And the problem is these people are representing a tradition that they know nothing about. Like just today, someone sends me a message and they're like, what you're doing is Śiva Siddhanta. And what my guru is doing is Kashmir Shaivism. And you're conflating the two to justify your own actions. And I'm like, okay, first be specific. What particular actions are you pointing to? And in what sense are those actions harmful? Secondly, what the fuck is Kashmir Shaivism? Like, explain to me what you think Kashmir Shaivism is. Because I'm going to explain to you why you don't at all know what you're talking about. Kashmir Shaivism was a term that J.C. Chatterjee introduced in his introduction to the Kashmir series of texts and studies in order to present a non-dual Shaiva tradition. But as you well know, the word Kashmir Shaivism is incredibly problematic because 2 reasons. One, the word Kashmir Shaivism, if it's used to indicate non-dual Shaiva traditions, it's very limiting, because there are many Kashmiris who are Shaivas who are themselves not non-dualist. Like, if you say Kashmir Shaivism is non-dual Shaivism, you are saying that every Shaiva in Kashmir, Brahmin or otherwise, is a non-dualist. And I don't think that's true at all. Just fucking go to Kashmir. Like, in Kashmir, you'll see a lot of them are practicing the Swachanda Bhairava Tantra, and the Kashmir Brahmanas, a lot of them are dualist. You're saying there's no Shaiva Siddhanta in Kashmir? Of course there is. In fact, some of the most important Shaiva Siddhanta masters, dualists, they're in Kashmir, Sadhyo Jyoti and others. They're probably writing texts on the Shaiva Siddhanta in Kashmir. So if you say Kashmir Shaivism means non-dual Shaivism, then you're excluding all the Kashmiri Shaivas who are not non-dualist. But it's also too broad a term because, it's too broad a term because many Kashmiris are not non-dualist. And it's also too limiting a term because many non-Kashmiris like me are Shaiva non-dualists. So if you say the only non-dualists in the Shaiva tradition are in Kashmir, that's disrespectful to the Kashmiris who aren't non-dualist, and it's incredibly disrespectful to people like Maheśvarānanda and other masters like Shittikanta maybe, who are in other parts of India teaching non-duality, non-dual Shaivism. So Shaivism exists everywhere in India, and of course Shaktism is something that emerges from within Shaivism that of course can also be discussed and debated. But this is just a failure to understand India, and it's the attempt of scholars and academics to maybe flatten or compartmentalize or simplify something that is far more diverse than I think we're ready to admit. That's my first thing. Secondly, I was saying to this person, what do you know of Shaiva Siddhanta? Have you studied the Raudava Agama? Have you looked at Mekandar Swami's Shiva Jnana Bodha? And more importantly, have you studied it with Agora Shiva's commentary? And have you seen how those verses in the Shiva Jnana Bodha can be interpreted in a non-dual way? Even Shaiva Siddhanta, to call it dualist is problematic actually. Even if it uses the 10 Shaiva Agamas and the 18 Raudara Agamas, which are dualistic and qualified non-dualistic in nature, the fact of the matter is there are many non-dualists in the South Indian Deccan places that will still be considered Shaiva Siddhantins, So the important point here is that Sri Vidya emerges maybe within the Shaiva Siddhanta first in the Tamil heartland. I mean, the evidence for this is the Tirumantiram, perhaps the first textual reference that we get to the Panchadashi, and this again also is sometimes debated, but it's, I think, pretty established now for the most part. And again, I'm open to debating. But it seems like the Tirumantiram of Tirumular Swami, that's the first time in Tamil, not in Sanskrit, but in Tamil, you hear about the Panchadashi mantra. So Sri Vidya probably already existed in South India, especially in the Tamil heartland, way before Shankaracharya, either Adi Shankaracharya or some later Shankaracharya, institutes the worship of the Sri Chakra in the Sringeri Mata and the Kanchipura Mata. So without thinking of Ramanuja's Sri Vaishnavism, without thinking of Shankaracharya, Shankara Dashnami and their emphasis on Chakra Puja and on Shodashi and Panchadashi, without even engaging with those things, which arguably you must engage with if you are going to consider any form of South Indian Shaivism or Shaktism, even without engaging with Shankara or Sri Ramanuja, even then you can see Shaiva Siddhanta is a Shakta movement. I did not grow up in a household with just Shiva Lingams. There were Sri Chakras all over my house. Like, at least come to my house first, before you're going to make claims that I'm being illegitimate in representing Shaivism. And this person, even had the gall to say, I have reverence for your family tradition. My ass, if you had reverence, you would bother to learn something about these traditions. Like, I'm down to debate, but the problem is nobody will debate me because nobody knows Sanskrit, nobody accesses primary sources. These people have never been to India, and even when they go to India, they go in some kind of tour group in which they're insulated from India because they're staying in like nice resorts surrounded by white people from America, and their tour guide is this white person who makes everything comfortable and safe for them and filters everything through the lens of your Western academic misunderstanding and outright racist and ignorant understanding of Tantra, which is not your fault given how diverse and complicated these traditions are. But I cannot debate you if you're a fool, and most of the people who want to debate me are fools. And when they realize their own lack of knowledge, they then opt out of the debate because they feel like they don't have to debate. Now, my thing is let's just be honest. Let's just put everything on the table and say, these are the texts that we're citing, these are the primary sources, and these are the ways in which we're choosing to interpret these primary sources. And again, if our interpretation is problematic, then let's argue, let's debate and clarify those interpretations. So partly I want to make one more case for us and for this world against such critiques by saying that it's even more complicated when we consider the role of dream dīkshā. Because at the end of the day, this is a mystical and spiritual tradition, and therefore, it does actually go beyond books. It does go beyond historically mapped lineages. It is very important to us that we receive a mantra from a guru. It's very important that we do rituals and chant mantras only having been initiated into those rituals and mantras. If we just get it from a book or we just get it from an internet, the tradition, I think, ubiquitously and universally and unanimously says, that's fine, but it won't be as effective as it could be. Not necessarily is it going to be dangerous. I think to say that it'll be dangerous to chant a mantra that you read from a book or dangerous to perform a puja that nobody actually initiated you into, that's fine, but I don't think that's the issue here. It's not really danger. It's more like lack of effect, lack of efficacy. And so the real danger might just be that you waste your time. You chant a mantra that takes you even longer to get the benefits or results from. Whereas if you just had received that mantra from a living lineage, from a living guru, then maybe it would have happened for you much more quickly and maybe more dramatically. If you do a puja, maybe the best way to learn that puja is from someone who can teach you in real time. The role of the human interlocutor cannot be overstated, especially given that we're humans. And maybe as humans, we learn best from other humans. Not necessarily from a large language model like an AI, even though the AI might be able to teach us a lot. Probably it won't be able to teach us a book, an internet page. The AI probably won't be able to teach us the way a human can teach us because it might not be as responsive or as sensitive to our needs as a student. It might take a human touch there. It could just be that. We could just be making a pedagogical point here that the best way for humans to learn is from other humans who know what the fuck they're doing. So therefore, I cannot deny that almost ubiquitously, almost unanimously, and almost universally, the Tāntrik tradition will say that you're best suited for Tantra, having been initiated into the mantra and having been initiated into the puja. Then when you chant the mantra or contemplate the mantra in your daily contemplative practice, and then when you employ those mantras, either in private ritual or in a gathering of other initiated people, only then will you get the most benefit. I think that's true. But be that as it may, while we still emphasize a living lineage, a guru whose lineage can be traced all the way to its inception, always we're going to say the Adi Guru, Adi Yogi, the first Guru, Parameshti Guru, is some divine being, like Parameshvara, Parameshwari, either Śiva or Shakti, maybe Narada, maybe Vishnu or Lakshmi, maybe Mañjarī in the Buddhist sense or something like that. Now that divine Guru is perhaps posited as a historical figure, as I'll explain in just a few moments, but not just that. The divine guru is not just historical in that in some period of history, he or she or they appeared and then taught someone and that person taught someone and that person taught someone and on and on and on it went until it came to you. We're just now remarking Devi over here was saying, like, it's kind of interesting. Ramakrishna gave a mantra or gave dīkshā to Swami Brahmananda. Swami Brahmananda gave the dīkshā then to Swami Shankarananda, and then Swami Shankarananda gave the dīkshā to Swami Sarvadevananda, and then from Swami Sarvadevananda, some of you took the mantra. I took the mantra from Swami Sarvadevananda. So in that sense, we're like 4 degrees removed from Ramakrishna. That's kind of a stunning idea, right? And if Ramakrishna, like Jesus, is considered the incarnation of God, then no wonder this lineage is so productive and so powerful. We're 4 degrees removed from God. And Vivekananda would say, remember who we are. We're the servants of Sri Ramakrishna. If we wanted to, we could crush up the stars between our teeth. We could unhinge the 3 worlds and throw them into the void. There's just that much power in the lineage. But arguably, Ramakrishna was a person in history. Like, he was embodied in the world as a person that other people were married to, or that other people were friends with, or other people were parents to, or family members of. You know, like, this was a guy, and then this guy then did something in history, and then there's a historical progression, which then culminates in us as lineage holders. But it's not so easy as that, because sometimes God doesn't play within the rules of space-time and reality. God might just appear to someone in a dream. Right? Like, people might dream that Ramakrishna came and gave them a mantra, or they might dream that Holy Mother gave them a mantra, or Vivekananda gave them a mantra. And I'm going to tell you maybe 4 or 5 stories of dream dīkshās that we in the Śiva, Shakta, Tāntrik world take very seriously. These 5 stories, the first one is about Vasugupta, of course. Vasugupta is very important because the Kashmir series of texts and studies, and of course J.C. Chatterjee is the introduction writer. And again, by saying Kashmir Shaivism is too broad and too limited a term, we are in no way undervaluing Kashmir. Not at all. I just think that it undervalues Kashmir to say that there aren't Shaiva Siddhanta things that came from Kashmir. Of course, Sadhya Jyoti, none of his works are in the Kashmir series of texts and studies. And that's tragic, actually. It's tragic that there are so many great dualistic Shaiva Siddhanta works from Kashmir by Kashmiri authors that are somewhat excluded from the Kashmir series of texts and studies, which all you Western academics seem to like so much. Sorry, I have a bone to pick. But then, because it's just racism, it's just flat out racism and ignorance, and in this racist ignorance, it's people trying to tantra police. You know, they're trying to like tell me that I cannot represent a lineage, and I'm open to any and all criticisms, but I'm just no longer patient with fools anymore. Because almost all the criticism I get is from people who have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. And I want to point that out. Enough. Just like read a book first. Like at least just read one fucking book and then we'll talk, you know? Anyway, I think it's unfair that like there are a lot of great non-dualists who are represented, a lot of great dualists who aren't. But the stuff in the Kashmir series of texts and studies, it's amazing. It's really, really important. Some of the most important materials in the Shaiva world, especially, arguably especially in the Shaiva non-dual world, like the Ishvara Pratyabhigya Karaka Utpaladeva, and even before him, Somananda's Shiva Drishti. And of course, you have to think of Abhinavagupta, and all of Abhinavagupta's contributions. They're considerable, and they were all Kashmiri authors. So without undervaluing the value of Kashmir, we must also recognize that this is more than just Kashmir Shaivism. It's more than just the Kashmir series of texts and studies. But taking the Kashmir series of texts and studies now, the first text that is introduced in that very important work, which is a voluminous, like it's many volumes with many Sanskrit primary sources, what's the first thing that the series offers? Does anybody know? And by the way, those of you who are serious about the study of Tantra, who want to access primary sources in Sanskrit to see for yourself what the books say so you're not beholden to whatever the marketplace of ideas on the internet tells you, like arguably you should have access to the Kashmir series of texts and studies. It's quite expensive if you want to acquire the whole thing yourself, but a lot of it is available on the internet. What do you think the first text in that series is? Anybody? Like what do you think the first, maybe arguably the OG, like Kashmir Shaiva non-dual text is? Just considering the Kashmir series of texts and you should know. Many of you in this room, you should probably know. Please know. Please know. If you don't, I'm going to kill myself right now. I'm kidding. But I'm going to want to. Because I'm like, what the fuck, you guys? What the fuck? Like, here's my problem, right? These fools on the internet think we're illegitimate. We are not. We are absolutely not. But like, for us to be what we are, we must aspire to the standards of rigor that Vivekananda demonstrated for us. You know, he absolutely whipped all the other brother disciples into shape. He made sure they learned Sanskrit. He made sure they were reading primary sources. It's actually not the Shiva Drishti, although the Shiva Drishti is there. 4 out of the 7 anikas, because we've lost 3 of the 7. 4 of the 7 anikas of the Shiva Drishti are in the... yes, thank you, Shri Devi. It's the Shiva Sutra, obviously, right? The Shiva Sutra is arguably like one of the first texts in that tradition. And we should know this, you guys. We should know this. We as a community, we have no excuse not to know this. So in the Kashmir series of texts and studies, we start with the Śiva Sutra. And the Śiva Sutra is attributed to one Vasugupta. You guys, who is Vasugupta's guru? Isn't that an interesting question? Who is Vasugupta's guru? Shiva, in a dream, right? Like, Lord Shiva appears to Vasugupta in a dream and reveals the verses that make up the Śiva Sutra. This is very important. If somebody right now claims that they are teaching Tantra and the legitimacy they have as a guru is that they saw in a dream a particular figure like a Siddha, like, I don't know, Matsyendranatha, or like Vivekananda, or in this case, Shiva, will you like immediately say they're illegitimate because they don't have a human guru? If that was the case, right, then you would discount Vasugupta, wouldn't you? I think the same people on the internet now who are like talking about things they know nothing about, who are like calling out people who they think are illegitimate, those people should also think Vasugupta is illegitimate because he got his revelation from a dream, right? That's the first story I want to tell you about, Vasugupta and his dream revelation. And we'll talk a little bit about that, like more Kashmiri non-dual Shaiva lineage called the Triambaka Vada or the Sampradaya, the Trika Sampradaya or Triambaka Sampradaya. But then also we can talk about Mahartha Mañjarī, which was revealed to one Maheśvarānanda by a yogini, but also in a very similar context, in a dream. So the next story I'll tell you is of Maheśvarānanda. The first one is Vasugupta. The second one is Maheśvarānanda. The third story I'm going to tell you is actually more contemporary. It has to do with Ramakrishna. The third story is about Rāni Rasmani, the founder of Dakshineshwar, who founded the temple on the authority of a dream. Like Kali appeared to her in a dream and told her not to go all the way to Kashi, to Varanasi, and instead, and by the way, Bringideva, you can see there's quite a theme now, the don't go to Kashi theme. and the theme is, here, do it here, build a temple right now and right here. And this is a dream, mind you. And the amount of money that would have been quote unquote wasted to follow the instructions in a dream is quite considerable. So you can see how valuable dreams are. Entire lineages can be founded on dreams, and Rāni Rasmani was really willing to put her money where her mouth was, or more importantly, to put her money where her dream ear was, because she heard in a dream through Kali that she should do something. And like Martin Luther King Jr., she had a dream, she took it seriously, and on the authority of that dream, we have Dakshineshwar. And because of Dakshineshwar, there's Ramakrishna, and no Ramakrishna means no Vivekananda. No Vivekananda means no yoga teacher training in the United States. Just think about that. None of you would be here if Vivekananda wasn't here. Right? And you know, somebody the other day, I was like, hey, you're a guest in our house, behave. And their response was, this internet liberal, by the way, who arguably cares about immigrants and whatnot, they were like, you're in my country. You're a guest in my house. And I'm like, listen, you are an Italian immigrant. If there's anything you have learned in the experience of your family immigrating into America as an Italian immigrant in New York, is that maybe you should be a little more compassionate to other immigrants. Do you know? But my point here is that, like, this idea of like yoga or Vedanta in the West, it was given as a gift, as it were, by people like Vivekananda who had to endure great hardship in this country to bring these ideas across the water. But like Vivekananda wouldn't be here without Ramakrishna. And if Vivekananda wasn't here, none of you would have yoga teacher trainings. None of you would have ever had any access to Paramahansa Yogananda. You wouldn't have had Shunryu Suzuki. I don't think so. I don't think you would have had any like Yogi Bhajan or even Osho, however problematic these brown guys with beards can be. None of them would have come, including Paramahansa Yogananda. I don't think any of them would have come if there wasn't that template of Vivekananda, as one documentary filmmaker called him, the first American guru, or America's first guru. Without Vivekananda, I don't think anything would have happened. And he kicked down the doors that later would be the way in which many Eastern ideas came to the West. If you like Alan Watts, arguably there would be no Alan Watts without Vivekananda. None of us would be here. So, if no Dakshineshwar, no Ramakrishna, if no Ramakrishna, no Vivekananda, and Sister Nivedita, Vivekananda's foremost disciple, she said, and if no Vivekananda, no Nivedita. She's acknowledging the lineage, you know. And we, all of us, whether we're in the Self-Realization Fellowship world, or the Yogi Bhajan Kundalini Kriya world, whether we're in the Yoga Teacher Training world, 200-hour, 300-hour YTT world, like, wherever we might be in our relation to Indic or Eastern spiritual ideas, there's a lineage here, by the way. And the lineage traces back, I'm going to say, to Dakshineshwar. All of this can be traced back to Dakshineshwar. And Dakshineshwar was founded on the authority of a dream. Do you know what I mean? Isn't that crazy and cool and wonderful to think about? And then that's the third story. The fourth story I'm going to give you is fascinating, is absolutely stunning, because it's even more contemporary than Rāni, Rasmani and Dakshineshwar. It's the story of Swami Ashokananda ji, who, by the way, was a contemporary of Swami Brahmananda, Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciple. Where Swami Brahmananda and Swami Vivekananda were direct disciples, first generation we call them, Swami Ashokananda was second generation. So although Swami Turiyananda was still alive, Swami Brahmananda was still alive, Swami Saradananda was still alive, many direct disciples were alive. Swami Shivananda ji, you know, the third president of the Ramakrishna Math mission, or in some cases the second president if you discount Vivekananda, they were all there, right? Ashokananda was young, he was a young brahmachari, and arguably before he even became a young brahmachari, he was like a young boy interested in the Ramakrishna mission and a contemporary of these first generation Swamis. Ashokananda never met Ramakrishna, but he did meet Brahmananda, Shivananda, Turiyananda, and he was quite close to a lot of them. Premananda also, and he writes reminiscences about his time with Premananda and others, especially Shivananda, who is particularly close to. Now, Ashokananda, this is very important, never actually got mantra dīkshā. You know, the president of the Northern California Vedanta Society, right, he founded the Vedanta Society. He didn't really. Trigunātītananda did. He took over from Trigunātītananda. But he was instrumental in a lot of that Vedanta work in Northern California. Do you know, he didn't have a mantra. He didn't get mantra dīkshā. And he didn't even get a formal dīkshā. He just got a dream dīkshā. So like, that's the fourth story I want to tell you about. And the reason I'm telling you all of these stories is because I want you to understand how complicated these lineages can be, but I also want you to understand that we're still talking about spirituality. We're talking about mysticism. And so, to a large extent, we're going to make room for mystical experiences like dreams and trances and visions, which unfortunately, in this modern context where we're all like actuallying one another based on books and lineages, and it's not to say there isn't value to that. Obviously there is. I make a big point about textual basis and lineage basis and all of that. I think we should also be sensitive to the fact that dreams play a part, mystical visions play a part. And if that's true, I'm going to propose something now here at the top of this discussion. I know it's already been an hour or so. It's been about an hour since we started. But I still consider this the top of the lecture because I haven't even gone into the material that I want to cover. But here at the top of the lecture, let me just make this claim. If you go on Instagram right now, you'll see on my stories and Bringi Deva stories stuff that Shri Devi Ananda Bhairavi is working on. Like she's drawing beautiful works, and the newest artwork that you put out is based on temple statues of femininity from ancient South Indian temples. And that's really quality art. And then not only that, you made an animation where you're using Sanskrit words and showing people the anatomy of that body in Sanskrit, which is very important because when you come to a padati, a ritual manual, and you're learning nyasas, you're going to see that this sound is to be placed on the shirase or shika or maybe mukha, and to know what mukha means or karna means or chakshu or netra means, that's going to be important in interacting with padatis. So you're going to need to have some kind of anatomy, and Shri Ananda Bhairavi Devi has given you that on the Instagram, on the internet, and you can see in the comments how fucking grateful people are. Did you see? They're like, thank you, I've been looking for this, and it's not just that you're getting information. Jai ma, jai ma, jai ma, vanga, vanga, vanga. Ukarama, ji, Bhairavaya namaha, Bhairavaya namaha, jai ma, namo narayana, narayana namaha, jai ma, come ma, jai ma, jai ma. This is Mega Vahini, the one who rides the storm, or the one who fucks the storm. Jai ma, ji. Jai ma. Kalyanam, 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 sarva siddhi karo, sarva shanti karo. Jai ma, sarva shanti karo. Sarva shanti karo, sarva siddhi karo. Jai ma. Ji, Nish.
I'm Daniel.
Pleasure to meet you. The prophet who has dreams. Yeah, we're going to talk about dreams today. Come. Please sit. Please sit. Jarma. What's up, you guys? Yeah, look at this shirt. I love it.
I have something for you in the car when we get.
Okay.
When you're done. Yes.
I have something for you in the bar.
Bar.
In the bardo. I have something for you in the bar.
Please.
We're going to talk about dreams, Daniel. Right up your alley.
Oh, yes.
Help me. So this is the point. Lineage is important. Books are important. Structure is important. legitimacy, authenticity, all of these things can be adjudicated based on historical, textual things. But you guys, this is still spirituality. This is still a poetic, artistic, personal quest for beauty and for truth. And as such, we must make room for dreams, for mystical visions, for intuitions that just arise spontaneously in our quiet moments. So I'm going to make this claim at the top of the lecture. Sri Ramakrishna gave a mantra to Swami Brahmananda. Swami Brahmananda, in historical progression, gave that mantra to Swami Shankarananda. And then Swami Shankarananda gave that to Swami Sarvadevananda. And to some of you and to me, Swami Sarvadevananda gave that mantra. There is a lineage here, yes? In that sense, you can trace it through history, and you can point to like actual people who lived in history, whose pictures we have, mind you. And then we can say, oh look, this is a legitimate lineage. That's the first point. Secondly, you can say, okay, here's my father, Selvalingam, and here's his father, Sodilingam, and here's his father, Vaitalingam, and here's his father, Nagalingam, and like that you can trace all these lingams. Lingam is a word that means sign, but of course it refers to the Shishna, the penis. You can list all of these dicks in my family, and you can go quite like 7 or 8 dicks up, historically speaking. And then we kind of like lose it, right? Like we don't have records past the 7th or 8th dick. And I like that the oldest dick is Naga dick, dragon dick. I'm so jealous of that guy in my family. Like his name was straight up Nagalingam. Like what the fuck? Like I'm Selvalingam, which means to some extent means like wealthy penis. Abundance
Yes.
penis, like
Yes.
Lakshmi penis. But
Yes.
Nagalingam? What a fucking sick ass name, you know? But anyway, you can trace these things in terms of history to establish like parampara, lineage. And of course, we should take that seriously. We should care about texts, primary sources in Sanskrit, and of course in other languages. We were just discussing how the first instance historically of the Panchadashi mantra being referenced is in Tirumular's Tirumantiram, which is in Tamil actually. And the Raudava Agama, one of the most important aspects of the Raudava Agama is the Śiva Jnana Bodha, which is attributed to the Nayanar Mekandar Swami. And that's a Tamil text. You know, and when I'm studying Sanskrit as a child, like a lot of that is not in Devanagari. It's in Grantha, which is the Tamil script that was, you know, used to render Sanskrit words. And if you're in Kashmir, you're not using Devanagari either. You're using Sarada script. And so many of the morphological and orthological points, especially with regards to Kundalini, which we call Kuttila Devi, or Harda Kala, that has to do with the way that in Sarada script, we draw the Ha sound, which is like a kind of S. And if you cut the S in half, Harda, Arda of Ha, that gives you the earring, you know, like a circle called Kuttila, as it were. And this like Kuttila, it's so important to point out that it doesn't necessarily mean Kundalini as serpent. That's maybe anachronistic to say. Like the first time we encounter Kundalini, not even in the Kubjika or Hatha Yoga post-classical sense, but the first time we encounter Kundalini, the metaphor is really of an earring. And that's a historical and cultural point that is sometimes lost on people in the more modern like setting in which Kundalini is almost always discussed as a serpent. Oh, Kundalini can be a bird hopping from branch to branch, or a pipila, an ant crawling up the spine. It could be like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. Often it's described as a meena, as a fish, you know, that mach or matsya, and the fish is flowing up the spine. So the animal references to Kundalini are not confined to just the serpent. There are so many different animals that we use. It's also like a light, a shining light that flows up. It's also a penis, by the way. In the Yogini Hridaya, the Kundalini is called a Shishna, a lingam, and that lingam fucks 4 yonis, which are the not even described as padmas or even chakras, wheels in this case. They're just described as pirtas. The word for chakra in the Yogini Hridaya is pirta, which has the connotation of yoni, throne or seat or yoni. And the Shushumna Nadi, the lingam, is not a serpent here, but a ray of light, like the Jyotirlinga in the Puranas. And that ray of light, the Shishna or the lingam of Shiva, is Bhairava Yogini. It's like it's in union, as it were, with these yonis. And even Sri Ramakrishna, when he talked about the chakras, he talked about these lotus buds, and he saw himself as a young sadhu giving oral sex to these lotus buds. Of course, you're not going to hear that in the English translations of the Kathamrita, but it's quite sexual, the imagery that he uses. He's like licking the yonis, and through that sexual stimulation, they bloom open. Right? That imagery is very kaula in nature, you know. And it's important to point out that, like, when we talk about Kundalini, we're making orthographic, or morphological points that you have to remember have to do with the way Sarada script presents these things. Even the Arada Chandra and the Bindu, that's going to look like something in Devanagari, when you draw the Om, that's going to look one way. And when you draw the Om in Sarada, it's going to look a different way. So Grantha script, Sarada script, Devanagari, these are all different ways of presenting Sanskrit. Now, this person on the internet, one thing that was so interesting to me is that they were upset that Sri Devi had posted this anatomy. And by the way, it was my fault, right? Like, you posted the thing, and then they were like on my case, and they were like, how can you do this? How can your community be putting things like this out? This is secret tantric knowledge. And I got many like responses like this from different people. But it wouldn't bother me if it wasn't so ignorant and so outright racist, you know, because their point was that the those things mapped onto certain parts of the body. That's secret, esoteric knowledge. Nyasas should not be revealed publicly. Jai Ma, this motherfucker is back. I missed you. Oh my God, yes. What's the point of killing God if you misplace his skull? Bhairavaya Namah. Kapaliniye Devi Namah. Balance has been restored. Jaima. Thank you, Ji. Thank you for safekeeping my head. It's so important that we understand this. The reason she was upset was because I don't think she understood that this is just the motherfucking alphabet. It's just matrika. Like, it's almost like saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Oh my God, you guys, that song is so secret. It's so esoteric. You should not be making art and posting that art on Instagram with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm like, you idiot. If you just took one Sanskrit lesson, if you had 1 day of Sanskrit education, you would understand your ignorance right away. And like, that's what's pissing me off, right? That's why I'm becoming like Durvasas a little bit with this. I realize why Shaivas are so angry. I know why your Kshetrapala, who you saw the other day, is so angry. They're so angry because how long are we going to suffer fools, you know, who make claims based on esoteric knowledge without understanding knowledge? You know, the first point I want to make is this. It is very important that we assess the legitimacy of a claim and of a dīkshā based on parampara, and often that can be adjudicated using historicity and using textual reference. Sure, no doubt. But we should also remember always that this is a poetic, artistic, personal, soteriologically oriented quest for beauty, truth, and meaning. And you cannot then deny the role of personal, intrasubjective experiences like dreams, like mystical revelations, like intuitions. And so then you must consider the cases of Vasugupta, Maheśvarānanda, Rāni Rasmani, and of course you have to consider Swami Ashokananda, who I think is one of the most important and most contemporary examples for what I'm ultimately trying to say in this talk. So, to what extent can you get dīkshā in a dream? To what extent can we consider that legitimate? To what extent can you start chanting a mantra that you saw in a text, or that you got on the internet, or that ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude told you to chant? Like, that's a question I want to ask, and it's, I think, a startlingly modern problem. Because back in the day, there's almost no way that you would have access to any of this without going, like, what to say of a Tāntrik mantra, like the Sri Vidya Panchadashi. You probably not even get Om, Pranava, nor would you even understand Gayatri, nor would you even know how to do Sandhya Vandana without at all encountering another human being. You have to go to the ashram, Gurukula, and that human being will then teach you. Probably it's your father, or some other person in your village that your father tells you to go and see, like in the Chandogya Upanishad. It's a startlingly modern thing for us to be able to access this knowledge through the large language models, through the textbooks, through the internet, Instagram posts, you know, through books. Like, that's new now. And so we have a modern issue, and we should bring ancient and classical and maybe even post-classical understanding to a modern issue, which means we might, without straying too far from our traditional parameters, are more like lineage-based ideology. Without straying too far from that, using that as a check and balance, using that as a system of accountability, lest we become idiosyncratic and ungrounded, we're still going to have, I think, novel responses. You know, it's a new world that we live in, and Tantra, if it's done anything over the years, Jaima, thank you, Ji, thank you. Adesh. You know how people say based? I'm like, that's so cool. Adesh just means based, right? Like, based. The base is there. Okay, having known this, I think this is important, what we're going to do. It's like, it's a response to modernity and its challenge of legitimacy, which we should take seriously, because there is still a threat of idiosyncratic lineages that are making claims, but maybe in bad faith. Do you know, I think India, there's something about like, and again by India I mean Nepal, Tibet, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, the Indic Sanskritic world. There's something about the ethos of spirituality in this tradition where we don't necessarily ask people who their guru is. It's kind of rude. You know, if somebody's like teaching, like say Bringadeva is sharing something on the internet, he'll get a bunch of comments and many of those comments will be like, who's your guru? Now, technically the correct response there is, why are you asking? I mean, you don't have to say that, right? Like that's assumed. Whoever your guru is, even if it's a human, that guru has a guru, that guru has a guru, that guru has a guru, and you're right. Almost everyone will argue that the Parameshti guru is the real guru, and the rest of us are in a disciplic succession from Adi Yogi being, or even the rishis, right? The Sapta rishis, they might not have needed a guru. There's something about the Sapta rishis that allows them to be sensitive to truth, and they receive it direct, as it were, from nature. In every brook, a book. In every stone, a sermon. They're uniquely able to like, you know, they don't even have to be stoned. The stone will give them a sermon. We're stoned, and then we still can't hear what the stone is telling us. And even when we hear it, we become kind of like cracked out, idiosyncratic, like people who name everything after ourselves. Like this is the niche method. You know what I mean? Like people become really weird like that. Like you appropriate something from Tibetan Buddhism and you call it like my method of breathing. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, yeah, it's a lineage. And we live in a we live in a modern world where maybe you're freed, in the Western sense at least, of having to identify a lineage. But there's some wisdom to that, you know? You go and you try that breathing technique and then you go get into like ice bath or something. You're like, wait, it worked. And in the West, sometimes it's a pragmatic, practical approach where you don't need to ask where a person learned something. If it worked, you know? That's like I think that's something that we should be sensitive to, that the Western world has a certain pragmatic way of approaching things that we could, I think, do better to assimilate. That's why it's startlingly like modern to think in this way, and I think it excited people like Vivekananda. He felt that Americans were maybe better suited, Americans and people that he met in the UK especially, they were better suited for this kind of transmission because they could maybe adjudicate it along more pragmatic lines that was, I think, innately interesting to him as a living lineage holder, because back home they might forget about whether or not this is actually making me like stronger, or whether it was actually empowering me. They're more interested in what book did it come from, who is your guru, who is your guru's guru, show me the historical progression of human beings in historicity. Like those questions are important, but they can become maybe a distraction sometimes to the most important thing. Does this practice have personal value? Does it actually tangibly and meaningfully fulfill your soteriological goals? Or does it feel in your own experience as a viable way to like ultimately articulate those soteriological goals? You know, so there's something that both traditions can teach each other. The East can perhaps teach the West this emphasis on parampara, on tradition, on continuity, on textual basis, like reverence for text is something that we get in the East that maybe in the West we're not so interested in. And the West can, I think, do very well to show the East that pragmatic things maybe matter also. That it's not just about whether or not you can point to a text. It's not just about whether your guru has a guru that you can point to. It's also about the innate quality and value of the practice, which should be verifiable. You know, it shouldn't be taken on faith only. If you do the practice and you do it with utmost sincerity and precision, the thing about these practices is that they speak for themselves. The proof in the pudding is in the eating, so just eat and see. And that's why when people do puja, I remember a long time ago, I heard a Swami, a Western Swami, American. He had gone to India, spent a lot of time in India. He was sadhuing around for a while. And he was very interested in puja. And he was telling me the story of how he learned puja. You know, he was friends with Lex Hickson, some of you might know. There's the Tantric visions of, what's the book called? Tantric hymns of the goddess or something. Lex Hickson was a very active spiritual teacher in Southern California. And I remember he told me that Lex G would say, I have citizenship in many different spiritual worlds. He was a Sufi, he was a Tantric, he was a teacher of many traditions. He was very distinctly like Southern Californian, you know, like in that sense. But this man that I'm speaking of, he was close to Lex G. He was in India. He's a sadhu. He's initiated into the Ramakrishna Matan mission, and he wears garua and all that. And he was telling me about puja. When he was a young art student in Southern California, he went to the Hollywood Vedanta Society, and he attended a puja. I don't remember if it was Kali Puja or whatever. He just attended a puja, and he had no idea what was happening, but he saw the innate beauty and spiritual power of it. He was like, whatever the fuck this is, whatever the mantras mean, I'm feeling something. He couldn't deny it. There was a tangible felt sense of value. So then he didn't even want to like learn puja the way he saw puja being performed. He just wanted to try something like it. So he went home, he set up an altar. That's the first step in starting a puja practice, setting up an altar. And then all he did was he gathered some flowers from his garden and put them on the altar. And the way he said it was so profound. He said, and something spiritual happened. His claim was that something happened. He just felt the innate value of that. So it could just be this, You could just like try something. You could chant a mantra for a little while. And I think very quickly you start to realize that there's something to this. And maybe it's not even important to explain why. You don't even need to get into this Aranyaka Upanishadic kind of like exegesis. You just do the Brahmanas. And again, by Brahmanas, I don't just mean the Vedic Brahmanas. I mean the Tantra Padatis, which are like the Kali Yuga Brahmanas, If you just do it, it'll work. Just like if I flip on a light switch, the lights will come on. I never have to ask any questions about electrical engineering. I can just try, and if it works, it works. And then if it does work, I can continue. And if it doesn't work, well, maybe I'll try something else. That's like an American pragmatism that I think we should also bring into all of this. So I want to just say this at the top of the lecture before we get into some verses and stuff. This is important to me. Imagine we couldn't trace our lineage and historicity, which we can. Oh, I should also mention about the first temples of Kali. They're in Kerala. Historically speaking, the first temple archaeologically of Mother Kali, Bhagavati, is in Kerala. But another clue here is when you look at Bengal and, their diet, their fish eating, for instance, the way they tie their saris, and you look at Kerala and their diet and the way they tie their saris, there's a stunning parallel. There's like a clue there for us, I think, as far as historicity is concerned. Why is Bengal and its Assamese Tāntrik traditions paralleling the Kerala Malayali Tāntrik transmission? And for this, I think if you can acquire these books, it's hard to get them because they're probably out of print and they might be expensive to buy. But if you come to my house, you can read them. I won't give them to you because they're very valuable to me. And I only have these 2 copies, and I was handed them by this person, and they're signed, so they're special to me. But these books, Amaranda Bhairavan, he composed 2 books. One is called Kali's Odiya, and the other one, Medicine of Light or something like that. I don't know. They're very beautiful books because they're about the experience of a Kerala Malayali Kali Bhakta and his teaching in the West of Tantra. But the books are biographical, autobiographical. They're semi-fiction, semi-biographical accounts of what his upbringing was like and how he received initiation from the matriarchal gurus of his Malayali tradition. So it's important to point out that there are traditions, whether textual or historical, that we can engage and we can say okay, that's how we demonstrate legitimacy. Yes? But let's just imagine, here at the top of the lecture, let's just imagine that we're starting from scratch. Let's imagine that there isn't a parampara that can be traced through texts or through cultures or through people in historicity. Would that make what we're doing together here illegitimate? Would that somehow make what Sri Devi published on the internet regarding the Tantric anatomy, would that make her art less beautiful? Would that make her infographic less informational? Would that mean that all the people in the comments who are so grateful for this knowledge, would that mean that they didn't get any benefit? Just imagine, as a thought experiment, we don't have a lineage. Let's say we have nothing to say to all of our detractors regarding our historical or textual legitimacy. Then what? And for the first time in my life, I think, as a Hindu who has always valued these things like texts and lineages and historicity, I must be assimilating into American culture. Maybe they'll give me my green card now. But for the first time, I'm thinking, yeah, fuck it. Even if we could not make a claim based on historicity or text or cultural legitimacy, I don't think it would actually invalidate or make illegitimate the kind of things that happen here. The value that we have when we come together and do this thing. The innate beauty, the innate power, and I would even argue the innate fellowship and community that arises because we are all sincerely trying to do this thing. If there's anything we've learned from Sri Ramakrishna, it's this: sincerity alone matters. Because maybe, just maybe, this could be crazy for me to say, but just maybe there is a God. Just imagine that. And maybe, just maybe that God is compassionate, benevolent. Maybe that God is willing to respond to sincerity alone. Maybe if you had no access to a guru, no access to a text, no access to Sanskrit knowledge, maybe you could just pray. Who would have thought? And maybe through that prayer, in a dream, you would get all that you need. Maybe somehow you would have, like that sadhu I was telling you about, some innate inspiration to try something. Maybe by the grace of this God, you came into a temple, saw a thing, and without ever learning how to do it yourself, you just went home and tried your own version of the thing, and maybe, just maybe, you still get some benefit. What a thrilling and beautiful idea. That if we just throw everything out of the window right now, and we start from first principles, right now, right here, there's one thing you cannot deny. Here is a room of sincere, genuine seekers. And what can't we do together? Do you know, Vivekananda felt like just give 7 people in a room and you could change the world. And I genuinely feel when you see what Bringideva is doing, what Sri Devi is doing, what everyone's putting out on the internet, what we're all doing here together, what is happening in Seattle, Mahadevji is leading that, what Jwalamukhi Devi is doing, what Grasni is doing. When you just like think about that, you're like, we're a whole new generation answering to questions that are answering to challenges and questions that are startlingly modern. And the way forward can be informed by looking back, but only up to a point. And I'm worried that so many of our spiritual communities now, with all due respect, are museums. They're stuck looking back. It's like Swami Vivekananda sat on this chair one time. The edge of his left butt cheek was right there, you guys. You know, like, cool. But if Swamiji saw you groveling like that and turning his stuff into a museum, like, he'd be like, dude, what the fuck? Like, do something at least. Like, read, study, contemplate, do puja, do japa, practice. Or at least pray, at least sincerely ask for help. And if nothing else, let's just ask. Let's just ask God to show us the way. Guide our intellects, you know. So having said that, our questions about adhikari, about competency, both as the recipient of a lineage and also as the one to transmit the lineage. This is an important question. Who can transmit? Who can receive? Do you know? And it's only people who are sincere, I think, that have any chance whatsoever of keeping this tradition, which in many ways is dying in so many places. It's only such people with the courage to chant mantras they weren't given. It's only such people with the courage to give mantras that nobody told them they could give and bear the consequences of that. Some of you almost died, you know, doing shit like this because you realize it's real. Giving a mantra is no joke. You know, and people have a problem with people giving mantras. I say, well, you know, maybe you're jealous. Maybe you want to give mantras. Go ahead, try. Give mantras, see what will happen. See what will happen when you assume karmic responsibility for somebody. You don't have the money to spend, and now you want to take on someone's debt. Try it and see. And then it will solve my problem at least. Because all of you who have a problem with me giving mantras, you try giving mantras yourself, you'll all die, and then you'll leave me alone. So go give mantras, kill yourself doing it, and stop commenting on my videos, and stop sending me messages and emails, and calling me and saying it's because you care about me. You know, like, you give mantras yourself, get the health consequences from it, die, and leave me alone. You know? And the people who are willing to give mantras and die for giving mantras, that sincerity, I think, is the only way our tradition will survive. And those people receiving mantras who are daring enough to receive it in circumstances like this, where it's not the color of cloth, nor some institution or some authority that gives that sense of legitimacy. It's those punks that are willing to do this kind of punk rock tantra. I think it's those people that have a better shot of transmitting a lineage. And what we're doing is dangerous, what we're doing is limited, what we're doing is, liminal, dangerous, countercultural, and motherfucking punk. And I'm so proud of us in this community and in other communities that are willing to do this kind of thing. So with that said, let's just look at some, for now, just some traditional ways to articulate adhikari, because we find so many references in so many primary sources all throughout the classical period that tell us, with some ubiquitous universality, like what it looks like to be the kind of person to whom a mantra is given and the kind of person who can give that mantra. The first source, of course, is a popular tantra, Vijnana Bhairava. So I'm just going to share my Discord screen here. And don't worry, I'll just chant these. Actually, before we look at the Vijnana Bhairava, let's just look at the Kaula Sutra. Arguably a somewhat later text in the tradition. The Kaula Sutra opens with these 3 verses. The first 5 verses of the Kaula Sutra are beautiful. They talk about the parinama, the transformation of consciousness into the universe. And this entire universe is a parinama, an evolution of prana. That prana shakti, which is inherent to consciousness, using very Vedic terminology actually, like akasha in the Vedas, arguably can stand for Śiva, space, and that akasha can dynamically transform into all this, vayu, tejas, ap, prithvi, as we learn in the Taittiriya Upanishad. That parinama, that evolution, involution idea, is the function of prana shakti, which is, I guess in the tantric sense, shakti. So akasha and prana, in the tantric world, we understand as Śiva and shakti. The Kaula Sutra and the Vijnana Bhairava is not stepping away from the Vedas. In fact, they're directly referencing the Vedas by choosing to use words like vyoma and vyapti and akasha, you know, in place of Śiva, and understanding Bhairava to be a gochara, a field or a space, and understanding Shakti to be prana Shakti. So before we get to the Vijnana Bhairava, the Kaula Sutra, like the Vijnana Bhairava, is going to use in verses 4 and 5 the idea of consciousness and the transformation through prana of this world, which is nothing but consciousness. So having said that, here are the first 3 verses. Avichinam movali kramayata marichi sankramanam evaiko guruhu. There is only one guru. Stunning claim. Because my guru has a guru, My guru's guru has a guru. My guru's guru has a guru. That's called the parampara. But here the claim is that there's only one guru. Now in the Ramakrishna mission, you might ask, well, should I get a mantra from this Ramakrishna lineage holder or that Ramakrishna lineage holder? And once this question was asked of a particular, I think, direct disciple or second generation disciple, and he said in response, it doesn't matter. It's the same water that is flowing through different pipes. Whether you get the water from this pipe or that pipe, it's the same water. The same Shakti is flowing through all the various mouths, the Vaktras. And if that's true, maybe there's only one guru. And the guru then is not the wire, but the electricity that flows through the wire. One very early idea that my guru emphasized to me is this. The guru is the wire. Of course, the electricity might not come without the wire. It can actually. You can still be struck by lightning if you stand in an open field. No wire is needed there. But in most cases, to be electrocuted, to be galvanized, you need a wire. But it would be pointless if that wire did not have some kind of electricity flowing through. That's why Swami Ashokananda, I think, once said this, that the guru themselves might not be perfect. You know, Sri Ramakrishna would often say, though my guru is a drunkard, it's kind of a Kapalika point. The guru might not be perfect, but even a faulty wire can transmit the electricity. And Swami Ashokananda used the example of a broom. Even a broken broomstick can still at times sweep the floor. Not as well as maybe a perfect broom. A good insulated wire will probably transmit that electricity just as well, if not better. But the point is not the wire and how good the wire is. The point is not the broom and how perfect of a broom it is. The point is whether or not it can clean the floor. Or more appropriately in this case, whether or not it can electrocute you. So, avaiko guruhu. There is only one. Eva eka guruhu. There is only ever one guru. And that guru is the avachanam, unbroken Maharīchi, the ray. The Maharīchi means illumination. The unbroken illumination that flows through. Kramayata means like krama, like a sequence. That flows through, and here the word is not parampara. It's not even sampradaya or anything like that. The word is ovali. A very non-Sanskritic word almost. I mean, just hear it, ovali. It doesn't even sound like Sanskrit. It's been Sanskritized maybe, but the word ovali means something like tribe. And it might refer to an autochthonous non-Vedic idea, where it's about a family. So the word ovali might be a word for kula. Here we're all kaulikas, meaning we're members of a family. And the idea of family, as you can see, is so important to the Vedics because there, it's probably your father or grandfather who will give you this knowledge. And here, it's like maybe not your biological father, but still the guru stands as a father of sorts, and the family of initiates stands as brothers and sisters to one another. And they have this like tribal family sense of looking out for one another and taking care of one another. And that like structure of the family, I've often called it the Guru Mandala. So it's not important that there is a person, but that there is a circuit of energy. And then all together they form the Guru Tattva. So the person in the kitchen cooking the meal is as much the Guru as the person giving the pravachana. The person who is doing the ritual might be different from the person giving the pravachana. Often they're the same. But arguably, there are all these different roles that we play for one another, and sometimes those roles cannot be defined sociologically. You can't say, okay, that's the cook, that's the one who brings the firewood. The younger disciples typically go out and gather the firewood, and then that's what you use for the dhuni. It's not so clear as that. Sometimes it's just the presence of that person in the community, just them being there. They form a node, as it were, through which energy can flow. And then all those nodes together, like points in the Sri Chakra, they make the mandala, and that's the Guru. Because the deity is not just the bindu. The bindu flows out and outwards. It flows back in this spanda of Shrishti and Sanghara Krama. And every deity in every point of every triangle and every point of every lotus flower and every point of the Bhupura, all of that together is the deity. Similarly, if the deity is the Guru, then the Guru cannot just be the bindu. In fact, the bindu is not any one point. It's an all-pervasive reality that manifests as every individual in the room physically and in the room psychically. That's the Guru Mandala. That's why you'll notice, if we are inspired one night, Kalashtami this past week, we're inspired to just do the Yogini Hridaya, you'll notice Bhairavanand, who wasn't there in the room, who had no idea that we were doing this, just of his own accord starts like becoming obsessed with the Chakra Sanketa and the Yogini Hridaya. Then he comes over the next day and he's like, I've just been Yogini Hridaya maxing. I've been on a Yogini Hridaya binge. And I'm like, why? He's like, I don't know. I didn't hear any of the stuff that we did, didn't hear any of the recordings that we put out. It just happens. And so if you look at the Kula chat, the WhatsApp group, it's like you'll see that like we just sometimes arrive at the same conclusions at the same time. We become interested in the same text at the same time. The Christ pointed out that wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also. That's the Guru Mandala. That's a very important point here. So when we say avachanam, ovali, kramayata, Maharīchi, sankramanam, evaiko guru, it's a stunningly modern claim that there's no single guru that is a human being, but there's a single guru that's an energy that flows in an unbroken lineage. And that lineage is more of a mandala than it is like a line. So it's almost like chakra upon chakra upon chakra. Just like think geometrically, this looks different in your mind than Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shankarananda, Swami Sarvadevananda, like, and then on to us. It's like, no, it's not that line. It's rather just Sri Ramakrishna plus all of his direct disciples, and then the direct disciples plus all of the second generation. So Vivekananda and Ashokananda are just as important to us as Brahmananda and Shankarananda would be. Right? That's an important point. The next verse. Tad upalabdham eva tattvam eko devaha. There's only one God. And it's not a monotheistic idea, it's a monistic idea that God is a reality. And we just call it tad. Tat. But when you put the tad upalabdham, the labdha to gain, that which is gained as a result of that transmission, that is a tattva, a reality called God. So God is not a being, God is being in and of itself. That Brahman, the same tat in the tat savitor varenyam, that tattvam is gained through the transmission. So the transmission has a value, and that value is soteriological. It reveals, as it were, something. Then continuing, of course, the Kaula Sutra, this is going to be about Shakti. And the Shakti here, which is non-different from that reality, is called Sahaja Aham Bhava Bhumish Chit Shaktihi. This reality is called consciousness. It's non-different from its power, and that power is the ground. What kind of ground? A natural, spontaneous, easeful ground of I amness. Now the claim is that you cannot gain something which you already are. If you already are this, the emphasis on dīkshā, on institutional authority, the emphasis on legitimacy, it's important, but it's secondary. It only becomes really, really, really important if there is indeed something to gain which you don't already have. Then there's stakes. If I spend hours and hours and hours doing a practice that comes from an illegitimate, unverified, unauthorized source, I would waste my time, right? That's a real issue. We want to be effective, especially if you're picking up the practice at age 70. You only got 20 or so years. You want to, really, you have varnashram idea here. You really want to get the most out of those 20 years. And you don't want to spend your whole life in an ashram giving your time and your energy to something if you aren't sure at the beginning, at the get-go, that it's really worth it to do this. But this is maybe lower stakes than that. Because whether or not it's legitimate, whether or not you do any practices, you already are it. If you already are this God, this reality, this Shakti, who's to say how you will recognize that you are this? Do you even need a practice? That's the question. It should be natural, easy, and spontaneous. So having said all of that, now we come to the Vijnana Bhairava. Towards the end of the text, verses 156 to 160 will give you these ideas. Tietat atitam devi paramamritam uttamam etat chanaiva kasyapi prakashyam tu kadachana. So this idea is very common. Para shishye khale krure abhakte gurupadayo nirvikalpam atinam tu viranam un atmanam bhaktanam guruvargasya datavyam nirvishankaya gramo rajyam puram deshaha putra daraka utumbakam sarvam etat parityajya grahyam etan mrigekshane. Oh, woman with two eyes. Kim ebhir asti rair devistiram param midam dhanam prana api pradatavya na deyam paramamritam. Thus has this been spoken, O Devi, the supreme nectar, the highest. And this is indeed never to be revealed to just anyone at any time. That's interesting, right? So there's as you can see here, a qualification. You can't just say this knowledge, this Vijnana Bhairava, to anyone, anywhere, anytime you like. It's the highest nectar, the highest wisdom, the most exalted teaching, and it should not be given to just anyone, anywhere. So now the question of adhikari. To whom then should it be given, if anyone? And it says, not to any other person's disciple. So the idea of para shishya. So we talked about this in the Yoga Nidhya. If you're the kind of person who already took dīkshā in another lineage with another guru, then you're disqualified from receiving this dīkshā. You already have a dīkshā. That's one adhikari concern. So it should not be given to those who have another guru, and it shouldn't be given to the wicked, and only to those whose minds are free of conceptual divisions. That's a huge claim. You should already attain the state of nirvikalpatva. You should be able to just sit, and your mind should be free of all differential thought constructs. So only a very qualified meditator, arguably, or a person with great dispassion, like vairagya, is one of the prerequisites for this nirvikalpatva. If you have a lot of interests and attachments and desires in the world, naturally you're going to be very agitated, because when you sit down to meditate, you'll think about those things. You'll be like, oh, I should, do my taxes, or oh, I should like hit up that person or something, slide into their DMs or whatever. Like if you have all these things going on, it'll be very hard for you to sit down and be still. But if you're like 70, arguably, and through the Varna ashrama system, you've like got your wealth and you've felt the reward of contributing to society, if you've already enjoyed sensual pleasure, you've eaten enough chocolate cake at this point, you're probably going to be quite calm. And maybe early on in life, if from past lives you've already had enough bhoga to like now not be interested in it, then maybe you'll be calm. Or you've been meditating and therefore you've cultivated this state of non-conceptual awareness. If that's true, then you're qualified for the Vijnana Bhairava. That's why a lot of people study it and they don't get a lot of benefit from it, because it tells you to rest between the breaths. It tells you to spin around in a circle like we were doing in the boba shop today. And if you just spin around in a circle and then you fall down on the floor and you look at the ceiling, the whole world will spin, right? Anta Shivaha, you should recognize God. You'll have the highest wisdom, but most of the time people do this and they just get dizzy and nauseous. Like the Vijnana Bhairava doesn't work for a lot of people. They sincerely practice it. And these fools, people when they study the Vijnana Bhairava, they like say, oh, there are 112 practices. As if they don't understand that it's satire. Like Shiva's like kind of laughing at us. He's like, it's so easy, it's so natural, it's already what you are, that to think of practice here would be superfluous. Therefore, you can do the most complicated tantric practice. You can do all these mudras like Khechari, Karankini, whatever. You can do whatever like tantric traditional practice, or you can just spin around in a circle and fall down and look at the ceiling. Like if that's true, right? The Vijnana Bhairava is not about practices. There aren't 112. There are at least 112, if not infinite ways to realize Bhairava. For example, let's make a practice right now. Let's just invent a practice. Let's think. Somebody, what do you think? What's a good Vijnana Bhairava Svabodhadaya Mañjarī style practice to open up to the reality of what you already are?
Tapping the skull on top of the
Yeah, right? Like, here it is. Maybe I'll try to balance it. No, sorry, I'll spill wine all over. Both would be good practices. Right? That'd be great. Anta Bhairavaha. Like, yeah, that will work. Like, that's the point of Vijnana Bhairava. Like, you can use the word va, the participle or, cha or va. Cha and va or. Yoga Sutra has this idea also where you can meditate on the breath, or you can meditate on Om, or you can meditate on a dream, you can meditate on your guru. Like, va, va, va. It doesn't matter what you meditate on, as long as you're fixing your mind on one thing. That's the Yoga Sutra approach to meditation. Here, it's just opening up to what you already are. Non-conceptual inner experience. Sva Anubhavananda, Antasva Anubhavananda, Nirvikalpa Gochara. Bhairava is defined as the field free of all differential thought constructs. Bhairava is that inner state of one's own blissful self-experience. What will open you up to that? Exactly, David. Just put the skull on your head. Or upturn the coffee and just sit there and be like drenched in coffee. Or get a piercing, or get a stick and poke. Devi gave me a stick and poke the other night, and then she posted about it on the internet. And you know how it is with the stick and poke community on Instagram? Like, you could post the best stick and poke, and people will just freak out, right? They're like, oh my god, he's going to get hepatitis, he's going to get gangrene. Is he okay? And then Devi, yesterday morning, we were up all night after puja, and she gave me her phone, and I just like went off, because I'm like clap back king at this point, because my hobby is like clapping back with people on the internet. So I'm like, yeah, he got gangrene, but he refused to get amputated, so he's dead now. But he's much better off that way. We're all much happier. He's quieter now. But you can get like direct revelation through getting a piercing, either like in terms of like an earring or something, or through a stick and poke. Like, that's the Vijnana Bhairava. So this won't work, arguably, if one is not already at a certain state of thoughtlessness. So it should not be given to someone who already has a guru. Parashisha means not to another's disciple, nor to the wicked, nor to the cruel, or to those without devotion to the guru's feet, but only to those whose minds are free of conceptual divisions. So the person must be devoted to the guru, and in other words, devoted to God. That person should not be cruel or wicked. And then they should be viras, heroes of exalted being, which could mean Kaula practitioners. To the devotees of the guru's lineage, it should be given without hesitation. A village, a kingdom, a city, a land, sons, spouses, and families. What are these unstable things, O Devi? This is the supreme stable treasure. Even one's life may be given, but this supreme nectar must never be given to the unworthy. So you can give anybody anything. One could give one's own life, but this is more valuable than one's own life. And the idea here then is you only give it to someone who knows how to value it like that. if they can value it more than one's own life, more than family, more than spouse, more than progeny, more than land, cities, kingdoms, that then arguably they know what it's worth. And to such a person with devotion to the Guru's feet, to such a kaulika, such a vira or a vira, to such a stable, thought-free person who has no other Guru, that person is fit by the standards of the Vijnana Bhairava to receive this knowledge. And who can give this knowledge? Arguably one who has it. And this could just mean who has the text. You know what I mean? Like, you might not even yourself understand what the text is saying, but you own it. Maybe your Guru gave it to you and you never yourself studied it. Now who should you give that text to? Who should you chant the text in front of? Someone like this. So it doesn't give any qualifications for the Guru, but here it importantly gives qualifications for the disciple. So that's enough of that. Now let's look at the Yogini Hridaya and see how there are very similar ideas being expressed there. And then you'll see what we're doing is we're looking at different primary sources in the Sanskrit, and then we'll see that they have more or less a very ubiquitous universal idea about adhikari. So here in the Yogini Hridaya, Shri Matre Namaha, she says, Shri Devi Uvacha, Deva Deva Mahadeva Paripurna Pratamaya Vamakeshvara Tantresmin Agya Tartastvanikshaha Tvanekashaha Tamstanartana Sheshena Vaktum Arhasi Bhairava Shri Bhairava Uvacha Shrinu Devi Mahaguyam Yogini Hridayam Param Tvatpritya Katayam Yadya Gopitavyam Visheshataha Karnat Karnopadeshena Sampraptam Avanitalam Nadeyam Parashishyebhyo Nastikhebhyo Nacheshwari Na Shushrusalasanam Cha Naivanartam Pradayinam Parikshitaya Datavyam Vatsar Ardhoshitaya Cha Etagyatva Vararohe Sadhya Kecharatam Vrajet Sadhya Kecharatam Vrajet. The goddess said, O God of gods, great God, expanding in total fullness, there is in the Vamakeshvari Tantra many unknown elements. Please reveal them entirely to me, O Bhairava. Katayami te, tell me, O Bhairava, about the Vamakeshvari Mata and clear my doubts regarding it. And then the teacher, Bhairava, here says, Shinu Devi, listen to me, O goddess, hear from me this Mahaguya, this great secret, which is the essence of the Yogini, or Yogini Hridaya, the heart of the Yogini, which is the absolute nature of reality. Again, remember, the word Yogini here might be referring to like a Dakini or a Kechari, one of these like astral beings that you meet in the Smashan. So this is the essence, the heart, the summary of what she told us, early Kapalikas in the Smashan, who were propitiating these like fierce and terrifying beings. So she told us about the absolute nature of reality. It's a secret. Now I'm going to tell you, because I love you. Tvat pritya. So I think this is itself a qualification for the teacher, and you'll see Swami Vivekananda in Bhakti Yoga when he talks about qualifications for teacher and for disciple. He says that this knowledge must be given for love only. So if somebody's doing it for money, then they're disqualified as a teacher. If they're doing it for nama, for fame, or for artha even, for some sense of accomplishment, then arguably they're disqualified from teaching it. And here's the thing, right? If you guys have a problem with Guru Yoga, with people doing this kind of thing, you should try it yourself. It's fucking hard. And if you don't love it, if you don't deeply love this knowledge and are sincerely enthusiastic about this material, and more importantly, you can be enthusiastic about the material, that doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to transmit it. You have to be so enthusiastic about transmitting it that you can suffer fools on the internet and suffer all, people will try to kill you, the physical violence alone will deter people. And the psychological trauma of doing this, it'll cost you everything. And then you'll know, right? Like life itself will tell you how much you really love this. Because if you love this more than spouse and sons and land and title, if you love this more than life itself, arguably only such a person will be able to do this sustainably for a long time. Most people, either sickness or financial ruin or some kind of relationship disaster, or something will happen probably as a result of becoming an inheritor of other people's karmas. Do you know what I mean? Once you start giving mantras, you'll very soon see it will tell on your health, it will tell on your finances, it will tell on your psychological well-being. Your whole life will probably be ruined. And if you don't believe me, try and see. And then you will see why you're doing this. Do you know? And if you're doing it for money, obviously there are easier ways to make money. People don't think this. They think it's religion is the best way to make money. But you'll go crazy first before you can at least, start to even enjoy your wealth. So only love, arguably, will keep you in the game. Although money and fame and the desire for power over others, that might bring you into the game. And if you're interested in those things, you should try. But what will keep you in the game, arguably, is love. And Vivekananda says this too. It's out of love alone that the Guru gives this. So, Tvat Pritya, because I love you, O goddess, I will tell you this great secret, which was revealed by the yoginis. This is the nature of absolute reality. So, Katayamya Adya Gopitavyam Visheshataha. What I tell you now, out of love for you, Gopitavyam Visheshataha, is to be kept especially hidden. Vishesha. It should be especially kept secret. So I'm telling it to you out of love, but you now must keep it secret. On earth, he says, Lord Śiva says, on earth it has always been taught and received by word of mouth. Here the translator, Arjanti, says word of mouth, but the Sanskrit literally means karnat karna upadeshena. So the upadesha, the teaching, is given to your ear from another ear, karnat, which implies that that ear heard it from some other ear. So mouth to ear, and then mouth to ear, and then mouth to ear. So from ear to ear is maybe a more direct translation, which means the Guru must have a Guru. But it doesn't specify whether or not that Guru's Guru is like your Guru, a human. Maybe your Guru got it from a dream. It still qualifies as ear to ear, no? Just like the Mahartha Mañjarī, just like Vasugupta. So from ear to ear, it is given, sampraptam avanitalam. So ava means how it comes down onto earth, it comes through the lineage from ear to ear. Now comes this adhikari concern. It must not be given to the disciples of other masters. Parashishya, again the same idea being echoed in the Vijnana Bhairava. It must not be given to disciples of other masters, nor to nastikas, nor to unbelievers. And in the Vijnana Bhairava you see that person must have devotion to the Guru. They must not be cruel nor wicked. So that nastika idea kind of means they don't know dharma. They don't know what would be right to do. They're not good guests, they're not good hosts. They don't know how to give donations and give charity. The idea of dakshina, you would never have to ask for dakshina. And in this world, arguably, you do. You might have to specify in the beginning, okay, here's the dīkshā, this is how much it will cost. Because this is how much it will take, arguably, to do the puja and etc. But in ancient culture, it's kind of just a given. You just come and bring your rice and plantains. And you can't ask for a fee because you don't know what that person is capable of giving. So shouldn't they have the discretion to decide what to give based on their own idea of what it's worth to them? So therefore, you don't need to say these things, but a nastika might not themselves be innately aware of these things. So wicked, cruel, has no devotion to the Guru or to God, those are other ways of saying nastika. So it should not be given to nastikas, and it should not be given to those who do not wish to intensely hear it. Vivekananda says the disciple must have perseverance, the disciple must have patience, but most of all the disciple must have sincerity, pining, the 3 P's, right? Patience, perseverance, and pining, or power. That person must really want this. And they must want it so much that they're willing to give over riches. Now, we talked about this extensively in our Thursday night class. This could be the question of dakshina, right? And that's why in the modern version of the Tāntrik dīkshā process, it's you give something, having been given the mantra. Dakshina, it's called. Often this is a monetary thing. But in Vedic civilization, it would be rice and plantains. So it would be something that contributes to the puja. Because you can't do dīkshā without puja. So at the very least, you bring flowers, you bring something, that kind of thing. But I wanted to read this in a different way. Not in that transactional, okay, you got the mantra, now give the initiating guru something. I want to translate this as an indicator of sincerity. How do you know a person is sincere? Arguably because you're investing time, they're coming from great distances, but even then that might not indicate sincerity. A person might give $5,000, but 5,000 means less to them than $5 means to somebody who has less money. So it's not the quantity of money either, and it cannot be money itself. That is the indication of sincerity. So the word riches here, I think in the Vijnana Bhairava was called sons, lands, titles, kingdoms, spouses. Riches means what you would think is valuable in life. If you know this is the most valuable thing, which by the way is Sri Vidya, it gives you all those things, right? When you learn Sri Vidya, you should also have Siddhi, Bhukti, like that. So if you know this is the means for those other things, why wouldn't you give up those other things to be able to get the Chintamani or the Kalpa Vriksha, the wish-fulfilling tree or the jewel, So if that's true, if we can accept that interpretation of Artha here, Naiva anartha pradayinam, anartha pradayinam, Naiva anartha pradayinam. If a person is not willing to give over riches, they're disqualified. So these are all questions about adhikari. Then he goes on to say, it can be given to someone who has been examined and tested during half a year. Now this has been a very complicated issue for me because it's in the Yogini Hridaya that you get an actual time frame. Half a year. What on earth does that mean? Does that mean that if somebody comes today and wants dīkshā now, you're never going to see them ever again, you should give them dīkshā now? Or should you say, no, you must stay in the Gurukula for 6 months? And if you're not willing to, if you have some other commitment, you cannot stay here for 6 months, then maybe that itself is an indication that you should not get the mantra. Having said that though, I've heard from so many people how they did not fulfill that condition, and the Guru was willing to like not abide by this shastric, like axiomatic Yogini Hridaya claim, and it was the best possible thing for them, for the Guru and for the disciple. That's what confuses me. Because so many times, these rules, if we follow them to the letter, it would, I think, close us off to the divine inspiration that sometimes emerges in that moment that requires that you give then and there. I don't know why. Maybe the 6 months were paid in some previous life. You know, we have to remember that it's not just this temporality that's being discussed here. I think it's possible to read 6 months in a very different way. Like, you don't have to like literally say 6 months. We know the Bible talks about time in a different way. The Tantras have like, when is the Chandi set? It's set in the fucking future. Like, what? We're reading a story about the future, and in that story, in chapter 13, it tells us that Durga is a name that the goddess will have when she slays the Rakshasa or Asura Durga. So meaning, she doesn't have the name Durga yet. But don't we still call her Durga? Don't we still say Jaya Durga Ye Swaha? Daksha Yagya Vinashini Ye Jaya Durga Ye Swaha? How is it that now we're using a name that in a different kalpa, she hasn't even gotten? Temporality is weird. And if you think of backward causality, maybe 6 months have already elapsed.
Yes.
And that person now, you're meeting them for the first time. It's in the future that you're feeling now the instinct to give them the mantra. Do you know, like Devi drawing the devil card? Yesterday, I told Devi I would give her Hadi, but only on the condition that she can pull the devil card from the tarot. And if she can do it now, I'll give the Hadi. And that time she couldn't. But then yesterday, she pulled the card, it was exactly the devil. And it's like, how do you know the setting of that condition 10 days ago was not informed by that event which happened last night? It's clear that like our understanding of time is a bit convoluted.
Aside from time,
Yeah.
like how our bhav can change over time. What you mentioned makes me wonder, like, can sincerity change? Can maybe sincerity comes and goes?
Perhaps.
Like, it's something that, if it does arise spontaneously, you need to take advantage of
Perhaps,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
I heard this idea from Swami Vivekananda actually at the Kali Mandir. It's a beautiful idea. We don't know where we're going to be in 3 years. We know where we are now.
No.
And if we say, in 3 years we'll have the same sankalpa as we have now, and then I'll leave everything and become a sannyasin. There are texts like the Vairagyam Eva Abhayam, what's that text called? The 100 verses on Vairagya. I forget what it was called, but like it opens with Vairagya Eva Abhayam. Through renunciation alone comes fearlessness. Like in that text, it says, the moment one gets the desire to renounce, one should, in that moment itself, renounce everything. You just have to take advantage. And then 10 weeks later, you'll be like, fuck, why did I do that? But it's good that you did it. And now there's no going back. You can't come back to your home village for like 12 years at least, you know. And you're like, thank God I did it then, because it was arising in me then. But on the other side, you could say, on the flip side, you're like, well, that's hasty, that's impulsive. If you wait for 10 weeks and you still want it, then you really wanted it. You know, like there's like another argument here where it's like we're looking for sthita pragya, like stabilized wisdom, meaning we're looking for sthita sankalpa or sthita you know, like the will that's stable and steady. Because why would you take the time to teach someone now who in 6 months is going to leave it?
Something more unwavering a little bit.
Yes, but you're right. I think that's asking for too much. We are going to change. Our life circumstances will change. Like our interest will wane. It's going to like probably wane less though if now we take advantage of a strong interest and then just get something. So given this, I think there's so many psychological concerns, so many issues of ambiguity with the 6 month period that you can't just like read this and glibly say, okay, well 6 months, I'll see you in 6 months, or stay here for 6 months, and if you still want it then you'll get it. What if the guru dies in those 6 months? Do you know, what if the student dies in those 6 months? It's like, this is so rare. The sankalpa, when it arises, it's so rare that it arises in someone at all. It's so rare that you meet someone in this world that has the ability to like answer that sankalpa, that I think it's going to be so tragic to like take this as seriously as we do literally. So at this point, I can see why you might have an issue here, because we have a primary source. The primary source in Sanskrit is pretty explicit about the time constraint. And yet here we are. And full disclosure, we've given mantras to people having met them for 6 minutes. And we just have to like own up to that fact, and probably will again. And yes, we can talk about backward causality. We can talk about how rare it is to have this desire, how we want to capitalize on it and take advantage of it while it's there. We can look at other texts where it tells us to do just that. But the fact of the matter is that when we're looking at tantras, we do have to like apply some kind of legalistic, argumentative thinking. You'll see I showed you a Padati, a Bengali Padati, that was the father of Swami Ashokananda, who wrote it, I think, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. His father was a Tāntrik who published this book, a Bengali book, and my friend translated it, I think using some large language model help and stuff like that. And we looked at the Bengali introduction, and what we saw was this Tāntrik taking excerpts from this Tantra, from that Tantra, and he was trying to ask the question, when do you worship Ma Kali? Between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., that's when Kali Puja should happen. That's why I was kind of like, when you were telling me I can't ring the bell after 10 p.m., I was like, should we just do Lakshmi Puja where we don't ring the bell? You know? And but how do you interpret 10 p.m.? Because the word is danda. They use the word dandas, and they say it should not be the first few dandas of the night, which would be like 7:30, 8:30, 9:30. It should be the later dandas of the night. It should be the night, like Nisha, proper Nisha. And Nisha would be 10, 3 a.m. Once you get to like 4 a.m., it feels different. Yes. The tattva changes, right? Like, and that's Brahma Muhurta. Then Kali, Smashan hours are closed, as it were. And that's so, Devi, when you ask certain questions, I'm like, ask me again at 11 p.m. You know what I mean? It's like there's some questions that you ask that are like 1 a.m. questions. And you can't answer them arguably when the Pingala Nadi is open and when the sun is out and when we're in this like more Vyavahara space. It's that liminal poetic space at night. You know, nothing good happens after 2 a.m. The witching hours. Yeah, witching hours, exactly. We have that same idea in the alchemical and folk European medieval traditions. So what does it mean for 10 p.m. to 3 a.m.? And this scholar and this Tāntrik, this adept, he's saying, well, maybe it's for secrecy's sake. Maybe the purpose of doing it between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., if we take all of these different tantras seriously, is because we want to do it privately. Because otherwise, if people see us offering meat and drinking out of Brahmin skulls, liquor and things like that, we might, as Brahmanas, lose our position in society, and that could bring great consequences to our family. So we want to worship Kali, but we can't post on Instagram that we're worshipping Kali, you know? So if you can articulate the rule 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. as an issue of secrecy, then if you can guarantee secrecy at 12 p.m., then go ahead and worship Kali at 12 p.m. It's just been my experience, maybe through confirmation bias, that I prefer to worship Kali and Vairav during Smashan hours, as G calls them. So if that's true, then maybe 10 p.m. or 3 a.m. is a matter of energetics, a matter of like Ayurvedic doshas or whatever. Maybe it's a matter of secrecy, I don't know. But you'll see, the point I'm making now is you'll see that in that text, in the introduction, he's making legalistic, lawyer-like arguments, using all these like axioms to come to an interpretation. So our job is not just to read the text, it's to interpret the text. But to interpret the text responsibly requires that we don't just appeal to agama, it's called sad-agama, but we also use sattarka. And sattarka, reasoning, like it cannot just happen in a vacuum. We say, tarko anadishtanam. There's no ground to reasoning. You can just reason and logic yourself in circles, right? But you must then reason based not just on the text, not just based on what your guru tells you, but based on your own experience, pratyaksha. So pratyaksha informs your sattarka, and agama, the text, give you parameters in which to like conduct that inquiry. So if we look at this verse that says it can be given to someone who's been examined and tested during half a year, we, I think, have some interpretive license here. And our own experience juxtaposes this rule. Because we have, all of us, I think, received mantras from people who have known us for less than half a year. We ourselves have given mantras maybe to people who have known for less than half a year, and it's been wonderful. And other times we've given mantras to people that we've known for years, 3-4 years, we've known them and we gave them mantras, and the thing was a disaster. So clearly there's some issue here with just taking these things literally. Moving on, as soon as one knows it, eta gyatva, the gyatva, tva, having known it, right? So, etat gyatva, having known this, as soon as one knows it, oh woman with beautiful hips, one attains the state of kechara. One becomes able to fly, one is free, you know. So, the phalam, the prayojana has been revealed, the adhikari has been revealed for both teacher and disciple. Also, there's another thing that I really like here. It says, I think you can even translate this, I will tell you out of love for you. It's like, you can also translate this as Katayami Adya Gopitavyam Vishesha. It's like, by your command, I am now going to reveal this.
Like your will is my wish. I mean, your wish is my command.
Yes, your wish is, exactly. So Shiva is saying, out of love for you, I'll reveal this. But the reason I'm doing this is not just because I love you, because you asked me to. So I once asked my guru, and like, this is what really frustrates me sometimes. It's like there's a PR thing that the Ramakrishna mission has to take seriously. And conversations that you have in private with your guru should be kept private. And so there's so many things that I cannot tell you about what I talk about with my guru. Therefore, it is not my responsibility to tell you whether or not my guru authorizes me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like kind of hard to like break that sacred trust. But I find that the modern challenges that we get require sometimes that I do. And so I'll just like flat out tell you that I would ask my guru, and often before I initiate anybody or before I even start pujas, I always go to my guru and ask if I can, and ask for his blessing. It's almost like if you want to marry someone, you have to ask your parents if they bless the marriage, and if they don't and you marry them anyway, they might not give you the money. You know what I mean? Like, you won't get the... So I had that like maybe like a superstition that if my guru did not know and vet something, then I could do it, but it would be like with some cognitive dissonance. I might not get access to the parampara and the shakti that flows through it. So I'd ask my guru stuff, and sometimes he would say like, okay, don't do that. But then he would immediately amend it and be like, unless you feel mother tells you to. You know what I mean? He'll always give me that disclaimer of like, if you're inspired to, then do it. Once he was trying to protect me from something, like taking on a certain karma, he was like, okay, give this mantra, but don't give with the bija. Then he paused and he was like, unless, like that's the thing. It's like kind of like, you have to give this disclaimer. Sometimes there's inspiration, and it could be impulse, it could be hasty, it could be some subconscious desire for power or like something, it could be a complex, not an inspiration. You don't know sometimes when you just spontaneously do something, whether you're doing it from a pattern or conditioning or some reaction, or if it's genuine inspiration. But suppose it is genuine inspiration. Wouldn't you take a chance? And like, you can be cautious. You can be like, I don't know if this is inspiration. Swamiji was like that. He wanted to go to America. He was inspired to. But, he just didn't feel like it was a genuine inspiration. Even Ramakrishna appeared to him in a vision in Kanyakumari and pointed to America. And he still didn't believe that. He went to Holy Mother and he asked Holy Mother if he should. And Holy Mother's like, fucker, go. They collected money for him. 3 times, I think. First, the Maharajas got the money, and he was like, no, if I'm going to go, it's for the Indian people that I go. It's only right that the Indian people collect the funds, and they fund it, not the Maharajas. So then he didn't take the money from the Maharajas. They did a kind of a Patreon thing where they set up a subscription for his talks, and people would mail money in for the talks. They gathered all this money from the people in Madras, and then Swamiji was like, nah, I don't know. And he gave all the money away to the poor. And this happened again and again and again until finally Holy Mother was just like, dude, just go, it's your... So people are often cautious, as we should be, about this impulse, this inspiration. But sometimes in the heat of the moment, if you don't know, we might just take a chance on God. So I think when Śiva says, out of love for you, that's a qualification for the Guru. And he's also saying, by your command. So the Guru then, the person who gives the mantra, I think is open to the will of the Divine Mother. And as one very respected Swami told me, I was feeling a bit like of an imposter syndrome around some of this a few years ago. And I went to that Swami and I was like, this happened to me one time. I was standing in front of a murti of Kali with somebody. We were both looking at the murti. And then I don't even know what happened. It was like a trance almost, where I like turned and this happened to be standing to my right. And I leaned into their left ear and I said a mantra with the bija. And that person was like kind of stunned for a moment, and like clearly something happened and I couldn't explain it. And then I went to my guru and asked about it. Not my guru, this other sadhu. And I went and asked him about it during a ride in a car. I had a chance. And so I asked him. And he said, when electricity strikes, sometimes the lightning will just like look for the path of least resistance to ground. And like sometimes when people are sincere, if there's any way that God can reach them in that vicinity, through the murti, or through a person, or through a dream, for the leela of it. Because, God could just like reveal to anyone, anytime, for any reason, in a flash like that, right? But to maintain the leela of like human interactions, it might come through a human, and you could be a broken broom, you could be a faulty wire, but that's the way electricity, the path of least resistance, will go through that. And so you might like trance out. And that's why I was in this position where I would like promise my ex-wife, I'd be like, look, I won't give mantras anymore. And then it was really like damaging to our marriage because I would say that. And I wouldn't be able to keep my promise because then we'd do a puja and someone would be sitting there and I'd be like, oh, finally. Like, damn, I did it again. I have to see like a Dīkshā Anonymous or something group like, hi, my name is Nishantanatha and I'm a Dīkshaholic. Like, I don't know. It was just like a compulsion. And maybe that's a complex, maybe that's a problem. Or maybe it's inspiration, maybe it's both, who knows. But like here, Śiva is saying, by your command, and because I love you, I'm going to give the Dīkshā. Now here's my thing, I love this stuff, and I have personally in my life gotten so much benefit from this stuff. even if my grandfather and even if my guru did not encourage me, right? Like I would still feel, I think, some moral compulsion to share with others who themselves are interested what has been so meaningful to me. And this is Sri Ramakrishna's mango thing. If you have a mango, you can eat it all to yourself. But it's often the case that when you have a mango, you want to share it with other people. And like out of love and out of command by the goddess, or just command out of your own inspiration, you're going to do this. So here we go. We just have this like qualification for the guru, qualification for the disciple. So having said that, I'm going to put these primary sources aside for a moment and just point out that this adhikari, like we said in the beginning at the top of the lecture, we're coming to the end now, this adhikari is not based on caste. It's not that you have to be a Brahmin male. It's not that you have to be of any particular age. It's not even necessarily based on any other qualifications, but the kind of sincerity that allows you to value this over anything the world has to offer. And it's about a steady, persistent, persevering sort of interest and intense sincerity. That's like maybe all that it takes. And the stuff about the Nastika, well, arguably like that has to do with valuing it. Like why would you value it if you didn't believe in the absolute nature of reality enough to like want to attain it? And more importantly, or recognize it rather. And more importantly, the stuff about like other people's other people's disciples, like I don't think that's meant to say, oh, you're disqualified because you already took a dīkshā. I think it just means that like they have a path. Why disturb them? So in a sense, this tradition will never be a missionary movement. Do you know what I mean? It's not about like inflicting. You're not being commanded by the goddess to go out into the world and with missionary zeal give everyone the mantra by sword and by taxation policy, the way that Abrahamic religions do it sometimes. Like no, it's like for people who want it and for people who don't want it, who already have another path, leave them alone. Let them do that path. Don't go to Christians and be like, oh, that's good. I have something even better. Nam myoho renge kyo, motherfuckers. You know, like there's like these Buddhist movements and they're just like, this is the best shit. Your shit's cool, but our shit is the best. And you know, like they're missionary movements, the Nam myoho renge kyo people. That's wonderful. If it works for you, it works for you. But they have missionary fervor. They're told by their lineage to go and like inflict their thing upon other people. You know, we're saying don't do that. Like we're expressly forbidding missionary work. Don't just go and give people mantras because it's not going to work because it might not be for them. If it works for you, it doesn't mean it works for them. We're all of us different. But if it does appeal to somebody, either they formally leave their lineage and come to this one, or this is the first lineage they approach, whatever the case may be. I just think this instruction can be taken to mean, don't give this mantra to someone who is not seeking it. And maybe they already have a guru. You know, maybe they like already took dīkshā, but for whatever reason, this is what they want now. And here you must be careful. Do they want it because you're losing faith in their lineage? And by giving it to them, are you here comes some mangoes, Janma, Sima. Swami Brahmananda once, he only talked about mangoes. Some people walked a great distance to come and see Swami Brahmananda. And they, waited for a long time. Finally, they went into the office. They sat with Swami Brahmananda. And this guy, he only talked about mangoes. He was like, oh, you come from a part of Bengal famous for mangoes. Tell me about mangoes. Like, what kind of mangoes are in season right now? And for like a while, they just talked about mangoes, and the boys left disappointed. They're like, this is the President Maharaj of Ramakrishna Mission? That was another story. Swami Brahmananda, you know how he was. He would just like smoke his hookah, play cards, fish. Like, that was just the kind of President Maharaj he was. So, like, a very important government official, like a prime minister or something like that, was there at Bellarmat, and he was going to meet the President Maharaj. And I think it was Swami Premananda who was just like, oh fuck, what do? We can't say that's the guy fishing over there. So they were all like telling Brahmananda to like stop fishing and come in, and like he just wouldn't. And finally it came out that was the President Maharaj. And this minister was like, what? And then he left. He left with great disgust and disappointment. Because what kind of President Maharaj is sitting there fishing, He doesn't look like the personage that was rumored to be one of the greatest spiritual illuminaries of the time. So having said that, Swami Brahmananda would be famous for just talking about mangoes. But we know mangoes are an important metaphor for Sri Ramakrishna. This amra, this he would use it to mean the ripe ego, paka ami or kacha ami. And he would use it to talk about like enjoying God. Like eating mangoes meant to like actually like enjoy God. Don't count the mangoes like that. So when Brahmananda is talking about mangoes, he's talking about God actually. But you have to be, only those who have ears to hear will hear. So having said all this, you guys, I want to close now by saying this. There are all these disclaimers as to who can get dīkshā, who should give dīkshā, all of that. And that's important. But we have to consider these maybe 4 or 5 cases. The first one is Vasugupta. So we know the account that we get in Abhinavagupta and also in Somananda, mind you, the account is as follows. Lord Shiva takes on an avatara. He's Karuna avatara, and it's the Kali Yuga, so the Vedic rituals don't really work the way they used to. And we know that because, here's a candle. Watch this. Agnimi le purohita. It would be crazy if it came. Like, it would fuck up my entire point. I was just like, wait, maybe that's for humor, right? And I'm like, wait, the Vedic mantras work? Okay, fuck all this Tantra stuff. And we should stop. We're Kshatriya, no, we should stop. Like, the Vedas are true. Only Brahmin males should do it. So, I should be able to light a fire with that mantra, right? Agnimi le purohita. But it doesn't happen. And so, arguably, I need a lighter to light this mantra. To light this candle. So the Vedic mantras are powerful, but they were powerful maybe at a different time. They're a valuable coin from a different currency, which maybe belongs in a museum and can be appreciated, but cannot be used now to buy vegetables. So what Lord Shiva does in the Kali Yuga, given our spiritual degenerate condition, is he takes an avatara called Shrikanta. So Shrikanta, the auspicious throated one, appears in Mount Kailash or like in the Himalayas somewhere. And it just so happens that a particular angry sage is there at the time, Durvasas, and he's just the one who gets the Śiva revelation. So Durvasas is like our Parameshti Guru. Some people say it's Dattatreya, like there's some wild man, a liminal kind of like Śiva, like icon guy. And in this case it's Durvasas. And to Durvasas is given this revelation. So Shrikanta reveals the Tantras to Durvasas, the Tantras being nothing but an updated, modified, modern Veda. That's why I'm saying what we're doing now is interesting because we're answering to modernity, and that's exactly what Tantra is supposed to be. It's an answer to modernity, and then here modernity is the Kali Yuga. So Lord Shiva gives this to Durvasas, and then this is so mysterious and weird. Durvasas, with his yogic powers, with his tapasya, is able to project into existence 3 Manasaputras, 3 mind-born children. The Manasaputras, Amardaka, Srinatha, and Trambaka. And to these 3, Durvasas gives 3 separate lineages. That means Lord Shiva reveals to Durvasas maybe 3 mantras or 3 revelations. To Amardaka, he gives this is going to sound like the opening of Lord of the Rings, to the 7 dwarves, and to the 9 men, and to the 3 elves. Like through Amardaka, we get the Dvaita traditions. They're called Bheda. Shaiva, Bheda, Vada. Like the non-dual traditions are given to Trambaka, but the dual traditions are given to Amardaka. Then Srinatha gets the Abheda, Bheda, called the Raudra Agamas. They're like dual and non-dual. And to Triambaka is given the non-dual tradition. So Shaiva non-duality is not emerging in Kashmir as a Kashmiri product, like exclusively. It's in the mountains. Lord Shiva reveals it to Durvasas, who doesn't belong to any Indian nation. He's a pan-Indian figure. Then Durvasas gives it to Triambaka. Trayambaka then projects 15 mind-born sons. So the lineage from Triambaka onwards is mysterious. It's not like actual children. It's mystical Siddha type children. And this happens for 15 generations. And I think the 15th one or the 16th one, his name is Sangam Aditya. It's funny because Sangam means like to connect or to fuck maybe. And Sangam Aditya falls in love with a beautiful Brahmin woman. And then he's the first one of all the children of Triambaka to like have a child, conceive of a child, like through the womb of a woman. And then that child's name, Arunamaditya, I think, or then it goes on, like there's Arunamaditya, and then it's like this guy named Ananda, or Ananda Aditya or something. And he moves to Kashmir, to Srinagar, and his child is Somananda. So Somananda's father's father, I think, is the first one in this like lineage of Triambaka. So look, Somananda is inheriting his lineage not from a guru but from his father. And that father's father up through 15 mind-born children is none other than Triambaka, who is the mind-born son of Durvasas. So Somananda, like Jesus is the inheritor of like King David and King Solomon through like a family lineage, this guy Somananda inherits his stuff from Shiva through his family, right? That's an important point. And it's a mystical claim here. It's not like you can't trace this through historicity. It admits of a certain mysticism, of a certain magic, of certain dream logic, as it were. So then Somananda gets this, and he gives it to his child, arguably. Utpaladeva is not Somananda's son, but he becomes Somananda's son through what is called Putraka Abhishekam, through adoption. By giving Utpaladeva this knowledge, Somananda in effect adopts Utpala. So Utpala's guru is Somananda, but it still can be traced back to Triambaka, and through Triambaka to Durvasas, and through Durvasas to Shrikanta, who is none other than Lord Shiva in incarnation. So that's a mystical claim. I just want to make that point. It's not a textual nor historical claim. but a claim of legitimacy based on mystical lineage. Right? So what, you're just going to say Somananda is not legit because he learned from his father? Right? Like, are you just going to say that somehow his father's 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 father is not legit because allegedly his father was mind-born? Do you accept mind-born children? Like Brahmananda is considered to be Sri Ramakrishna's Manasaputra. Though Sri Ramakrishna didn't like project him into existence through the seed of his mind alone, he still considers him, though he was born of a womb, to be his mind-born child. What do you make of these claims? This is important to consider. Then we take the case of Utpala Deva's commentary on Somananda's Shiva Drishti. In the commentary, Utpala Deva says, oh, I'm just writing this commentary because my son's friend is confused about this text. So it's all like in a family system. It's so intimate and sweet and cute and just like, people are so racist sometimes because like that would be legitimate to them, you know, like Utpala Deva's commentary for his son's friend is important, but it's important because of its innocence and sweetness. Okay, that's Somananda, that's Utpala. That's the first thing, that itself is really weird. But the first story is Vasugupta. We don't know that Vasugupta has anything to do with Somananda. In fact, we don't know that Vasugupta has anything to do with Trayambaka. The Kashmir Shaiva lineage is called Trayambaka Vada. You know, and I don't even want to get into Ardha Trayambaka right now because allegedly Trayambaka also has a daughter, a mind-born daughter called Ardha Trayambaka, and to her is given the Kaula Marga. This is a weird claim that Kaulism, Kaula Marga, was revealed by Shiva to this woman named Ardha Trayambaka, and she offers the Kaula Trika, whereas Trayambaka just gives the Trika, which can be understood in the Dakshina sense also. And Machandanatha, Konkan Amba, you know, who these people are, nobody knows. Matsyendranatha might not be the 13th or 14th or 15th century like guy in the belly of a fish who like goes to the bottom of the ocean and hears Shiva, gets Hatha Yoga and then becomes healthy. Like that might not be the Matsyendranatha in question. This guy probably came from the Deccan, maybe from Assam, maybe from South India, nobody knows. We don't know who his guru was. We know who his wife was. Her name is Konkanamba. And it could be Kumkum Amba, right? Like Kumkum, meaning Sindur. She is the mother of vermilion. That makes sense. That's obviously like, you know, like a very Kaula idea. But if it's Konkan, and we have textual corruption here, we don't know if it's Kumkum or Konkan. If it's Konkan, that's a geographical location. And that's like about 2 hours west of Mumbai. If you go to Mumbai, take a bus, go west 2 hours, you get to this place called Konkan. It's like a coastal place. I've been there. It's amazing. There's a temple called the Vetala Bhairava temple. And it's like almost like the worship of a ghost or a Kshetrapala, who has been since you hemorrhaged to Bhairava, to Shiva. But the villagers still think of him as like a jungle ghost that they worship. And you were hearing all those whispering and things like that. It's like, you don't really know if those are yoginis or like, I don't know, who. They're mystical beings, Kecharis, Dakinis, but what is their spiritual status? It didn't matter to these people. All that mattered to them is that there's a tangible spiritual presence that protects them. Let's give them mangoes. That's it. That's all we need to know. So I love that temple, Vetala Bhairav. You can Betal Bhairav, they call him, Betal. And you can Google it. I think there's a Wikipedia page on it, and there's a picture, I think, in the Wikipedia page of the chapels. And I've seen those chapels, you know, they allegedly at night, they go missing. I don't know if it's a prank, some villager takes them or something. I don't know if it's a temple custom, but they say you can hear the clippity-clop. You know, I didn't, when I was staying there, hear the clippity-clop, but I saw the chapels, and I mean, you just get a feeling, I don't know. Anyway, so Konkan is a place. Konkan Amba means the mother of Konkan. Is it possible that we're talking about a woman who's from Konkan and is Machanda by virtue then of being her husband also from Mumbai or from the Deccan, we call it? And if you go to the Deccan, the temples there have all this Kalamukhi Kapalaka imagery. You'll see a lot of times this like naked guy with an erect phallus with a club. This Dandapani guy. He's probably Lakulisha. Lakulisha is one of the early like Kapalika, Kalamukhis, like that. So anyway, the Deccan is important, the whole Deccan plateau. And there you see like Mahalakshmi being worshipped in this Ekavira way. India is complex. I think that's the TLDR of all of this. And if Machanda and Konkanamba are the founders of the Kaula, if Ardha Trayambaka, the daughter of Trayambaka, is the founder of the Kaula, in either case, you have the beginnings of a tradition with somebody who doesn't have a guru or whose guru is not known. And we're okay with that. Right? That's an important point. Okay, anyway, so having considered all this, we don't know who Vasugupta is. We don't know who his guru is, whether or not he even had a guru, we don't know. And we don't know whether or not he's related to Somananda or to Ardha Trayambaka or to Trayambaka in any way, shape or form. But we know that he contributed something called the Shiva Sutra. In the world of Tantra, this is a singularity. Because every single Tantra, the Yogini Hridaya, we don't know who wrote it. Amritananda we know. Amritananda Natha is the commentator of the Yogini Hridaya. He wrote the Deepika. He's a member of the Hadi Vidya by his own admission. And his guru is Punyananda, who we know wrote the Kama Kala Vilasa. So we know these two guys, Punyananda and Amritananda. We know one is the guru, one is the disciple. But the Yogini Hridaya, who wrote it? Nobody knows, nobody cares. Because our claim is that it's from Śiva. Now the Śiva Sutra can properly speaking be called a primary source because it's from Śiva. But it's the first time, I think, in the history of Tantra that we can also identify a human, Vasugupta, a human who lived in history, who we know was there in Kashmir, who was at this particular place called Mount Mahadeva, which you can actually visit now. You can go there. And allegedly, he was just doing tapasya in this mountain, and one day he had a dream. The accounts vary. Some say that it was Śiva himself who came in the dream. The others say it was like a siddha. I think it doesn't really matter. But in the dream, somebody came, Śiva or a siddha or both, and that person revealed to Vasugupta all these verses. Chaitanya Matma, Jnana Bandha, just like short aphoristic statements. Then Vasugupta, allegedly in one account, not all the accounts, but in one account, he then says, how do I know this is real? He's asking for verification, like any responsible person would, right? And in the dream, the Siddha or Śiva says to him, go to this rock and look under the rock and you'll see written there all these verses. And you can still go to that rock, it's not written there, right? So maybe it was revealed to him and to him alone. But I think it is important that he asked for some kind of falsification, Popperian verification. But in some accounts he didn't, and I don't think he even needed to. Because what happened next is important. He gets these sutras, it's like a download in New Age terms. Then he composes a work called the Śiva Sutra, and he offers auto-commentary on it. Meaning, having written the verses down that Śiva told him, he then interprets it along his own understanding in an anecdotal pratyaksha satarka sense, and this is considered a primary source. It's a revelation of Śiva. So the Śiva Sutra or the Śiva Upanishad, it's a Shaiva text of great value. It's the opening of the Kashmir series of texts and studies, and it spawns what is called the Spanda or Pratyabhigya Vada. So it's not just the Śiva Sutra, it's the commentaries. There's the Spanda Sandoha, the Spanda Nirnaya that Shema Raja Abhinava Gupta's guru, his disciple, contributes. But also this is a guy named Bhatta Kalata or Kalata Bhatta, and Kalata arguably is the disciple of Vasugupta. Whether they're related in terms of family, we're not sure. Kalata Bhatta is said to have composed the Spanda Karaka. But it's also said that Vasugupta composed the Spanda Karaka. So whether it's Vasugupta or Vasugupta's disciple, that's an interesting question but not an important question. The Spanda Karaka and the Śiva Sutra are considered to be the source literature of the whole quote-unquote Kashmir Shaiva tradition, which in other words is the non-dual Shaivism of Kashmir, which is, as you know, just one of the many forms of Shaivism in Kashmir. What do we make of that? Is Vasugupta illegitimate because he heard something in a dream and he composed the text? If so, throw out the Śiva Sutra. But we don't. We find it of great historical significance, great soteriological value, and when we apply it, we see that this is a powerful tradition and a powerful text. And my only point here is to say that we as Shaivas, we as Tantrikas, accept traditions even when their legitimacy is sometimes as thin as this, as thin as a dream. Okay, that's the first example. The second example is Maheśvarānanda. Maheśvarānanda allegedly might have had a guru. I think it's very likely that he did because allegedly he was performing puja. And some say he was a priest in the Chidambaram temple. Some say he was a priest in the Deccan. I think it's more likely that he was in the Deccan because the first version of this text was in Marathi. So I was told this by my family when I was a child that he was a priest in Chidambaram. I'm like, okay, that's convenient because our temple is the Chidambaram temple. We're Tamils. So of course you want to claim Maheśvarānanda. But why then did the goddess reveal to it in Marathi? How would he have known Marathi if he was living in Chidambaram? Maybe he was an emigre or something. I don't know. But it's important that the yogini appears to him after he performs a puja and falls asleep. He's sleeping and in the dream the yogini comes, or after puja he's about to fall asleep and he's this liminal waking dreaming state, another sandhi, like a sandhya vandanam kind of gupta navarātrī idea. And this liminality, the yogini comes and allegedly she just does this. Right? She doesn't even need to tell him anything. She just goes and then he just gets this download, as it were, and he composes in 77 verses, about 77 verses, this Mahartha Mañjarī. Importantly, it's not enough for him to just compose 77 verses. He then also contributes Marathi and Sanskrit, what is called bhasha, or vritti, or otherwise known as vimarsha, or vimarshini, it's called, a reflection. He's using reason and he's using anecdotal experience to explain what is meant by what the yogini told him. So that then he gives this text as the Mahartha Mañjarī and makes it a mainstream text that is then distributed amongst initiates, not just where he was, whether Tamil Nadu or the Deccan. But all throughout India, the text is studied. And some people say, oh, it's a Kashmiri Śiva text. The reason they say that is because its ideas are very like the Śiva Sutra, like Somananda's Śiva Drishti, like Utpaladeva's Ishvara Pratyabhiga Karika. So the yogini then, they say now, the yogini is Keuravati, the disciple of one Kashmir Shaiva Gyanendra Natha or Shivananda. So Shivananda's disciple Keuravati, she's the Siddha, the yogini who appears in dream to Maheśvarānanda. So what do you make of this? Will you discount the Mahartha Mañjarī? Will you throw out Maheśvarānanda just because his guru is now not a human in historicity? Do you know, our tradition again in this second story, you'll see, demonstrates a willingness to accept dream. Third story. Rāni Rasmani is on a boat and with a huge retinue of her people. There's, by the way, a boat for cows because you need the cows for the milk for the chai. And how on earth can you go all the way up to Kashi without chai? So the fact is she's paying a lot of money to have cows on the boat, to have her people, her whole court, they're all there on the river going up to Kashi. And on the way she has a dream, and in the dream Kali, the goddess, her Ishta, comes and tells her, there's no need to go to Kashi. I want you to build a temple here. I will I will come and accept your food. And allegedly when they had the murti, they didn't want to install her until a particularly auspicious new moon or something. And she was in the murti like a Egyptian pharaoh in a sarcophagus. And she comes in a dream again and says, what are you doing? I'm stuck in the box here. Take me out of the box and quickly install me. I want to receive your worship. And apparently they opened the box and saw sweat. Isn't that crazy? It was a mystical experience. Komalakanta was challenged one time to prove that Murti Puja is real. And he poked the Murti and blood came out. And Sri Ramakrishna would put in a very scientific way to test whether the Murti was alive. He would put a piece of glass or something under and he saw the condensation. These are mystical experiences and we consider them valid. They're scientific experiments and the mystics who conducted these experiments got tangible results. So this Rāni Rasmani, on the authority of a dream, and this cost her what today would be hundreds and thousands, if not millions of dollars. It cost her. It really cost her money. It cost her time, and it put her in so much difficulty because now she couldn't find priests. She was a Shudra, Kaivalta woman, and she's starting a temple, and all this is so impractical. Why would she go through so much financial expense, so much impracticality, if that dream wasn't serious, if it wasn't valuable? And we, all of us, don't question the legitimacy of the dream because the proof in the pudding is in the eating, and look at what that dream produced. We're here now because of that dream. That's the third story. The fourth story is the most important to me, and I want to close with this. So Swami Ashokananda, he's a young boy. He's not even in Kolkata. He's in a village. He reads about Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, in Bengal, especially in Kolkata and villages adjacent to Kolkata, like Birbhum district, like that. You all obviously will know about Ramakrishna. Just like the Protestant ethos is the dominant religious flavor of America, the Ramakrishna mission with its Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu background, that's the dominant ethos of Bengal. Swami Bhajanananda and Swami Vivekananda are fond of making this point. So obviously you would come across Ramakrishna, at least a picture of Ramakrishna. In Ascent to Spiritual Illumination, Swami Ashokananda offers this anecdote. He says he saw the picture of Ramakrishna in Samadhi, throwing the horns, as we like to say. And he said, I really enjoyed that picture. That's it. He just loved looking at that picture. And he would just look at it all the time. And it wasn't long until he discovered the works of Swami Vivekananda. Apparently he had a teacher in high school or something who was very excited by Swami Ashokananda, and a friend of his. They had this enthusiasm, and the teacher organized a special class outside of school hours with just these two boys. And that teacher, like Mahendranath Gupta, Master Mahashoy, he just himself was a devotee, and he saw these two young boys and he saw their enthusiasm, and so he himself, of his own volition, this teacher had a special class, extracurricular class, where he just read the Kathamrita with these boys. And so of course Ashokananda, as a Bengali, he got in touch with the Ramakrishna mission, he acquired the literature, and he just devoured Vivekananda. And if you read Vivekananda Raja Yoga, as we're going to do, G will offer some pravarchana on the Raja Yoga book. It's a very important book because it was written in English arguably, and it has everything you need to actually start a meditation practice. And you know what he says, Vivekananda, he says, if you're sincere, 6 months is all it will take. Same number, 6 months. He said, you can be a perfect yogi in 6 months. That's Vivekananda's promise. Because it's not that hard actually. You just stick to it, and you really do it for hours every single day. In 6 months you'll get your fruit. So anyway, this book gives you everything you need. It tells you how to sit, what to do, how to breathe, all that stuff. he studied this book, he became interested in meditation, and here's what he says. He would go to school, and in India, you know, in many parts of India, you take a siesta. You go to school in the morning, and then you leave school, you come back home, and you like rest and stuff, and then you come back to school in the evening. So during this like siesta period, he would come home and meditate. He would sit and he would meditate. I think he meditated on Kali. That was interesting. He said he would every day visualize Durga or Kali or something. One day, he's just sitting there meditating. Right? He's meditating on Kali. And then, this is his account. I think he offers it in Ascent to Spiritual Illumination, or maybe Let Us Be God, or Call of the Eternal, or something. I forget, one of his books. I'm sorry, I forget which book exactly. I'll find the citation later. But in this book, he offers an anecdote. Oh, it could actually be his reminiscence on Shivananda. Yeah, Shivananda or Premananda. By the way, this was like the end. He used to give 3-hour talks, 4-hour talks, right? At the end of one of his talks, it was Shivananda's birthday, I think. Oh yes, it's in the Shivananda book. Very rare. It's like a really tiny book. It's very hard to acquire this book. If you go to the San Francisco Vedanta Society, probably they'll have it there because that's his center. But that's where I got it. And so that book, it's tiny. It's like this little like yellow or orange book. And it's just a transcript of a lecture. So he's speaking just like this. He gets to the end of a 3-hour lecture, I think on the Upanishads or something. And then someone in the small audience mentions, today is Shivananda's Jayanti. And so he just, off the cuff, offers an anecdote, right? And this is where you like just, you eat this stuff up. Because Ramakrishna sadhus are so reticent about their personal, they never share their own experiences. They're very like, quiet because they don't want to turn it to sentiment and create drama or whatever. So anyway, he offers this story. He says, he was just meditating on Durga or on Kali or something. And suddenly, he saw Vivekananda, like, appear in his meditation. He wasn't trying to meditate on Vivekananda, but he saw the image of Vivekananda, like you saw Śiva that day. It just kind of, like, impressed itself upon you. It's just so clear. And then he said, these were his words, it was like one jar or jug was upturned over another one. He felt through the crown chakra, like a flow of energy entering in through his crown chakra. Just like the scriptures say you should mentor on the Guru here, he felt this, in his words, jar being upturned over him, and the contents of one jar being emptied out into another jar, and he felt such a tangible transmission, and he claimed that he looked at his eyes in the mirror after, and they were bloodshot. Something happened. There was a physical effect to what happened, and he looked at his eyes and he was like, whoa, what was that? And then he wrote to the Swamis at Bellarmine about this experience. He said, so this happened. And Swami Turiyananda, Swami Brahmananda, and Swami Shivananda, all three of them direct disciples, they all said that he had gotten dīkshā from Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda at that point had already left the body. But he had promised in London that I might find it good to leave the body, but I will never cease to work until the world knows that it is one with God. I could cry when I'm thinking about this because Abhinava gave the same promise. He said, anybody anywhere who reads my work, I will be there. He said, I as a Siddha will come and aid you who are studying my work, just out of love. And Matsyendranatha, Gorakshanatha in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it's claimed that they will come also. These are Siddhas. They're still alive, even though their bodies have long since been consigned to the flames or to the waters of the Ganga. So the idea that Vivekananda can appear to you while you read Vivekananda is something that in our tradition we take very seriously. And many of you have read Vivekananda, you know that that shit does something. It changes your whole life. For me, just one book, it was all it took. Nikhilananda's biography on Vivekananda, like I read that book and I was like, fuck everything, this is my life now, you know. And also Turiyananda gave a very like Abhinava Gupta and Tāntrik explanation. There are different kinds of dīkshās. There's Ānava dīkshā, where you get a mantra and you get a puja, like Gayatri mantra and Sandhya Vandana. That's Ānava dīkshā. It's something to do, right? But there's something called śaktopaya dīkshā or Shakta dīkshā. Turiyananda wrote in a letter to Ashokananda that what happened here was not Ānava dīkshā because he didn't get a mantra, you know. Rather, what happened here was called Shakta dīkshā. He got Shakti, he got power. Turiyananda didn't talk about Shambhava dīkshā. We don't really know what that looks like. And we don't know how to distinguish Shakta dīkshā from Shambhava dīkshā. But anyway, these are very tantric terms that Turiyananda is invoking here in this conversation. Shivananda and Brahmananda confirm this. They're like, yes, you got dīkshā. And now Ashokananda doubts this. He's like, but I feel left out. Everyone else goes into a room and there's a puja and they all get mantras and that didn't happen for me. I just got some kind of Shakti transmission or whatever. So he wanted a dīkshā. He wanted to get one from Brahmananda, he wanted to get one from Shivananda, but it never happened, you know, like they were always like, just like, yeah, later or something. And one of the Swamis, not Brahmananda or Shivananda, I think interceded on his behalf. They were like, please give this boy Diksha. He's been asking. And he said he had another dream. It wasn't just this experience. There was a dream that he had shortly after this, where in the dream, Vivekananda walks into his family's home and sits down. And his whole family is there, and Vivekananda is just talking to Ashokananda in the dream. And Ashokananda says he was feeling bad for his family. Because he's like, why aren't you, like you're just focusing on me? Like, my family is here. And Vivekananda was not interested. He was just interested in talking to Turiyananda. And that was it for the dream. He also relayed this dream in a letter to some of these Brahmananda, Shivananda, Turiyananda types. Anyway, Ashokananda is begging for a Diksha, right? Like, he's like getting Swamis to intercede on his behalf. And you know what Brahmananda said to him? They had a correspondence, I think through letters, or maybe through dialogue, I forget. And Brahmananda said, my boy, if Swamiji himself gave you Diksha, and you doubt the legitimacy of that, how do you know after I give you Diksha, you won't also doubt that? He was saying, like, that was real, you really experienced that. If I give you Diksha, you will also really experience it. If you doubt that, then why shouldn't you doubt this? What makes this waking world Diksha more real than your dream Diksha? What, a mantra? How many fools get mantras? What does it do for them? How many fools get mantras and chant those mantras? And see, they're the same fools they were before Diksha, I think. You can see this in the lives of people who take too seriously the actual transmission of a mantra. It's not the mantra, it's the bhava. It's like there's a whole thing that goes, spirituality can be given. It's like a thing that can actually be given. And it's more than just the mantra. Not to say the mantra doesn't have innate value. Ashokananda, to this day, I mean, he's long since left the body, he never received a mantra from any Swami living in the Ramakrishna mission. Shivananda wouldn't do it. Brahmananda died before he got around to doing it. Because he had already received Diksha from Vivekananda. And another thing to note is that you have to be 6 years of brahmachari, go through 2 years of training center before you can be given your ochre robes in the Ramakrishna Matin mission. That wasn't how it was in the first few years of the order. If they felt like you were ready, they would just give you sannyas then and there. And that's what happened to Ashokananda. He joined the order, he was a brahmachari for like just a very short time, and they immediately gave him sannyas and immediately sent him to America. Because they said, my boy, you are chosen to do Swamiji's work. And you must go to America and teach. Here's sannyas, you're a fully fledged order member, and now go and do it. And the whole time, Swami Ashokananda's story is a story of imposter syndrome. He didn't believe his Diksha, he was scared to accept his dream, he was being responsible. But all the Swamis were like, fuck you, dude. That was real, you know it was real, we confirm that it's real, now fucking really go do your job and do Swamiji's work. And if you read Swami Ashokananda, he's been very special to me. I know, although he's more in the Advaita Vedanta kind of like monastic sannyas kind of bhava, even Jayarata pointed out, he's like, for Kaula Margins, why is there so much like sadhu literature? It's because of the power. It's not the ideas in Ashokananda that are so valuable to me. It's what happens when you read Ashokananda. You know, I used to be very militant about this. Like in 2021, 2022, whenever I would initiate anybody, I would, 2023, I would just like force them to read Ashokananda. You know, like, and I remember for Kuleshwari, she didn't like it. She was just like, what? This is like, I can't have sex, I can't do this. Like, it's so monastic. And I'm like, no, it's not the ideas. It's something is happening when you read Ashokananda. And what happened when I read Ashokananda felt like what happened when I read Vivekananda. And it's feeling like how it feels when I read Abhinavagutta. So, these are all very important stories, I think, that advocate for the role of dreams and mystical visions and trances as also a source of legitimacy. And I hope that this inspires some of you to take your dreams more seriously, you know, to take your intuitions more seriously. And maybe to, in a punk rock kind of way, without dismissing the like legitimacy that you can get from texts and from living historical lineages, maybe there is some room for just doing your own thing. You know, maybe if you look up on the internet a mantra, maybe it's the goddess's grace that you find that mantra. Maybe she allowed you to read that book in which you found a mantra. And maybe if you start chanting that mantra, if it's needed, by her grace, you'll find a guru who can give you that same mantra. And, I've in my own life seen how I knew a mantra and then I got dīkshā into that mantra and then I was like, whoa, something's changed. You know, so maybe there is something to that. But there's also maybe instances where you never get a human dīkshā and you don't need one, maybe. So having said all of that, I just want to offer you, this is crazy because I don't usually like to do this in a public setting. I'm obviously in the Ramakrishna lineage and I know better. But I'll just offer you a few anecdotes of dreams, a la Swami Ashokananda. I got so much value from him sharing his dream stories that I feel like almost remiss if I don't tell you about some dreams that are very, very valuable to me. So I'm just going to tell you like 5 or so dreams that I've had, very short moments that have meant everything to me. So one dream, I was on a boat. Actually, no, I'll start with my first dream. regarding Ramakrishna. Way back when, it was 2020 or 2021, I'd already been going to the Vedanta Society of Southern California for a few years, since 2017. I didn't think to ask for Diksha, and by the way, they weren't going to give it to me. Do you know, there's like kind of a leela with that, where they didn't want to give me Diksha because, again, there's a rule. You can't give Diksha to someone who already has Diksha. I already had Diksha, and I told them that. My grandfather gave me this mantra, I'm in the Śiva lineage, and they're like, okay, you're good. Just chant your Śiva mantra. You don't need a Ramakrishna Diksha. But I really wanted one. You know, the last thing my grandfather did before he kicked the body was he gave me Nikhilananda's biography of Vivekananda. And then one early dream I had in 2020, it was the night my grandfather kicked his body. Now, I hadn't yet heard from my mom through the Facebook Messenger text that he had kicked his body. I think I was on like shrooms or something that night, so maybe that might have helped. I was just partying. I was in a rock band. I had no interest in doing any of this. I just wanted to play rock music. And then that night, we were just partying. I was on shrooms or whatever, and then I went to bed. And then in the dream that I had that night, like there was a river, not the Ganga because it was much thinner. And on the other side of the river, there was a very small temple, and there was a Śiva Nataraja in that temple. And of course, our family temple is the Chidambaram temple, the temple of the dancing Śiva. And then my grandfather was there, and he was waving arati lamps. And then he turned to me, and with great joy and excitement, he told me to come across the river, as it were. And then I was like, whoa, no, it's chill. I'm going to stay on this side. You know, 'cause it was kind of scary, actually, the idea of going across the river. Maybe, you know, he's on the other side. And then he was like, fine. And then he didn't say anything. He just like, in that moment, like looked at me in a certain way. I didn't really understand anything at that point. But when I woke up, I remember I had this like distinct dispassion for playing guitar in a rock band. Suddenly that just seemed so trivial. Like I was just that previous day, like conspiring about the next show and like the marketing that would go into getting the tickets to meet the pre-sale. Like that was everything to me until I had that dream. And in the morning, I was just like, I went to my balcony. I saw my mom's text. I was like, oh, funny about that. I felt no grief whatsoever. And I just like did my shraddha on the balcony for my grandfather. I remember in my old apartment. And then that very same day I get a text from my friend. It was just the beginning of COVID or whatever, and like my friend tells me that their yoga teacher training has been paused because of COVID, and now she wants to continue, so she started a thing called Stay Home Yoga, my friend Annie, and it was just like an Instagram group, and she wanted to have these Zoom meetings where they could continue teaching yoga as part of their teacher training. And they were like, do you want to just do something? Because they knew that I was... Weirdly enough, I had done already at that point 200 hours of teacher training, just for fun, just because I liked Hatha Yoga. And they were like, hey, like, why don't you just, like, give a class? So I said Monday night, maybe at 9 p.m., I'll just do a Yoga Sutra thing, just a Pravarchana on Yoga Sutra, Because they were like, well, you know Sanskrit, like, it'd be cool if you just, like, commented. So it was 9 p.m., it was 3 people, and it was just the Yoga Sutra. But the fact that came my way right after my grandfather kicked his body, right after that dream was significant, and that was 2020, and that's when I started doing this, right? So like that was like my grandfather's thing. I hadn't yet taken the Ramakrishna Dīkshā. Then maybe shortly after that, within that year, I had another dream where in the dream, Swami Sarvadevanandaji was there, and he initiated me in the dream with a mantra, and I heard the mantra and remembered one of the bijas of the mantra. I didn't remember the whole mantra, I remembered one of the bijas. I went and told Swami Sarvadevanandaji this, and he was like, nah, you already have a Diksha, it's okay. But then I had a plan. The third dream I had was me and Vijaya, I was married, right? So like me and Vijaya were in the dream, we were both wearing white, and there was like a beach or whatever, and we were both together, and it was like this sense that we had both just taken Diksha, although in the dream there wasn't the same Diksha environment. And then I was giving a lecture, and there was a sadhu in orange in the audience listening to my lecture, and almost as if like kind of guiding me in the lecture. He was like bearded Indian sadhu, he was like nodding, and just by like engaging with him in the audience, it seemed to guide my lecture. And then I was like, I know, I'll get Vijaya to ask my guru for Diksha, and then I'll say, well, because we're married, you should just give us both Dikshas. That was my plan. So I had Vijay go and asked him, and immediately Sarvadevanandaji was like, yep, okay, I'll give you Diksha. And then I was like, well, if you're gonna, and then that's how I snuck in, as it were, and got the Diksha. Shortly after that Diksha, within the year of that, I had another dream, and this was particularly important to me. I was on a boat, like a steamer, like an 1890s steamer, and in that boat, there was a room where there was like maybe no more than 4 or 5 people on like a bench, and it was a very narrow room. And outside the room, there was like a waiting room of sorts. And Swami Vivekananda was there. It was the first time I had a dream of Swami Vivekananda. And he was there, and he was trying to give me a mantra, and he gave me 2. The first mantra, I should mention, when I got my Diksha with Swami Sarvadevanandaji, indeed that bija that I heard in my dream was there in the mantra when I got it in waking life also. That was stunning to me. I was like, whoa, there's something to this maybe. Anyway, in this Vivekananda dream, he's giving me a mantra, and I can't hold it. Like, I can't in the dream remember what he's saying. Like, the mantra comes and it feels like it's too much and I just can't remember it. And then he like kind of in a frustrated, flustered way, he's like, okay, never mind. And then he gives me another mantra. The second one I remember to this day. So he gave me the second mantra. Then I go into the room and there's a whiteboard and I start drawing Purusha and Prakriti and I start teaching Sankhya, just basic Sankhya and stuff. And Vivekananda walks in behind me. He goes to the end of this like long telescope-like room and takes his seat way back there at the end, and he has his arms folded like this and he's like watching me. And I'm giving the lecture and I'm nervous because Vivekananda is there, but I'm also feeling very strong and empowered because he's there. And I never like lost that sense of this feeling of like Vivekananda is there, you know. And then I took dīkshā also importantly on his birthday, and it just felt significant. And the final dream I'll tell you about, I won't tell you any of my Kali dreams, but the final dream I'll tell you about is this. The one time I ever dreamt of Thakur. I've never had a dream of Ramakrishna prior to this, and since this time I've never had a dream of Thakur. And it was recent. It was in January of 2026, right before I came to see you guys in Ashland. It was maybe like late December, early January. We had just done the Atlanta retreat for the last time actually. And so it was a wonderful retreat. My God, 4 nights, didn't sleep at all. Just at the Dhuni every single night. And the best stuff happened at the Dhuni. But the lectures are pretty fire too. And the room, we filled the room. It was great. People all over the American South had come. And it was just like the internet community that had been there on the internet for so long. We were now finally all of us together. Viranatha was there. Asha was there. There was something to just having everyone together in a room. It does something, you know, when the Sangha is together in this way. So we were all there, just intensely doing our stuff. And it was a great retreat. Now, the retreat ends, I come back to, and by the way, that retreat was also the end of my marriage, because like, Vijaya gave me this ultimatum. She was like, come back to bed, it's New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day or something, and you've been up for 3 or 4 nights, like, you're gonna get an aneurysm, like, just come to bed. And I knew that if I came to bed, maybe I would have saved my marriage, but also, I couldn't leave the Dhuni. And for whatever reason, I felt like more beholden to the strangers around the Dhuni, many of them who would later come out on the internet against me, you know, all these people who were at the Dhuni, just strangers, they felt more important in that moment. And I think I would always have made that choice to stay at the Dhuni. It was very significant. Anyway, we'd finished the retreat. My marriage is in shambles. The retreat was a very like traumatic thing in our marriage, as it were. And then I come back home, and I think one of the first 2 nights upon getting back to my LA apartment, I go to bed, and in my dream, I'm there at the Vedanta Center again, the Atlanta Center in Tucker, Georgia. So I'm there in the like Swami's room where I stay when I stay at Atlanta, and I walk out into the living room. This is like not the temple, but the living room. Now the living room and the temple, there's like a hallway outside that separates the two. And I'm in the living room, and then behind me there's like this light, this like glow. And I turn around and I see it's Thakur, and Thakurji is walking out of the Swami's room into the living room, and I'm terrified. I feel this fear of Thakur, you know, and then I turn around and start walking really quickly, and I can feel that motherfucker like behind me, like following me, you know, and I walk out of the living room and I make a beeline for the temple as if the shrine room will protect me from Thakur. It's like really funny, and I think it's distinctly important in the dream that Thakur is not in the shrine room, he's in the room, and he's behind me, and I'm like walking away from, trying to get away from Thakur, and then he's coming up behind me, and then I get to the door, and you know there's like a code, you remember, like to get into the shrine room there's a code, and I'm at the door and I forget the code. I'm just like, it's like a horror movie, I'm just like trying to like get into the code to like get into the thing, and Thakur is coming closer and closer and closer, and there's this overwhelming sense of like I can't escape, and then I turn around, and then like it's just like Thakur like dissolves into like light, and the whole thing is this wonderful experience of light. And I just woke up, and it was just chill. It was like more chill than you would imagine, but like that was the only time I ever dreamt of Thakur. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful moment. So I'm imagining now that we aren't a part of a historical lineage. I'm imagining now there aren't any texts that we can draw from for legitimacy. Fuck it. On the authority of those dreams alone, I feel inspired and confident to do what we're doing. And on that conviction, I think we as a community will have sustainability. Because the conviction we get from dreams is a pratyaksha. It's an experience. It can be corroborated through sadagama. It can be understood through dream analysis and sattarka. But the fact of the matter is, the experience was undeniable for me. And what else do I have to go off of but that? And what else will I need but that? May we do Swamiji's work. May our lives be given to Thakur's work. We who are the servants of Sri Ramakrishna, we will crush the stars between our teeth. We will unhinge the three worlds and throw them into the void. And no internet troll will ever deplatform us. Take what you want. Come at us. Do your worst. But we'll be here, as we always have been. The doors will be open, and we'll always be doing Thakur's work. May this be an offering at his lotus feet. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Shri Sarada Arpanamastu. Shri Vivekananda Arpanamastu. Shri Kaula Arpanamastu. Shri Marga Arpanamastu. Shri Guru Arpanamastu. Jai. Shri Guru Maharaj ki jai. Jai Ma.